Tipperary are back. No, they're really back now at this stage. They're back into an All-Ireland final, first time since 2019. Oisin O'Donghue, thrilling finish to the game. He was the super sub-hero, sticks it into the top corner, cracking goal. Tipperary's fourth of the match. That dramatic win with 14 men against Kilkenny, their great rivals at Croke Park. Full-time whistle blows, we're kind of all assuming that's all. And then we get more drama after the game as well, which is that the final score was not what was on the TV, and perhaps more crucially, was not what was on the stadium clock. So it actually finished Tipperary 420, Kilkenny 30 points, not Kilkenny 421. You might say, what does that really matter? Well, in injury time, and there were 4 minutes, which was a substantial chunk, but most of them played after the goal, Kilkenny thought they were a point further behind, which definitely influenced their decision to go for goals and to not take a couple of points late on in the game. We'll talk about that in a second, because the CCCC, those good people have to wait for James Owen's report to find out what went wrong. We've had a look back over it a few times before we come on to pod, and we'll give our take on it now in a sec. But the other semi-final, a complete goal fest, but very much to one side for Cork. 7 goals, first time that a team has done that in an All-Ireland semi-final since Cork themselves against Antrim back in 1986. It's also Cork's biggest semi-final win since against Antrim in 1984, 24 points. They put 20 points up in Dublin on Saturday. So now we're going to have, for the first time ever, old rivals, 2 of the big 3, Cork against Tipperary in an All-Ireland final. And good news ahead of next week. I don't know what we can read into the 2 games so far, where Cork were easy enough winners in the league final, and we kind of wrote that off because it was so close to championship. And then the first meeting, which is also a Porky Queeve in the championship, we wrote off because Darren McCarthy was sent off, and we actually thought the Tipperary did a good job that day with 14 men. So that's a little preview of the preview ahead of the final next week. But Skehill, all the drama is now coming off the back of this GAA statement. So just before we come on to do the pod, the GAA say, quote, "We can confirm that the official score at the end of Tipperary versus Kilkenny was 420 to 30 points. The GAA acknowledges there was confusion over the final score. The CCCC is awaiting the full referee's report in order to establish how the initial mistake occurred." So, Skehill, we've had a few looks at this. To diagnose the mistake itself, this is Noel McGrath's point, which, obviously extended Tipperary's advantage before Kilkenny were fighting to try and get back level. It goes wide on the Hogan stand side. The umpire on that side waves it wide, but the umpire at the near post for the TV view looks like he's going for the flag, or looks like he's indicated it, but actually it would seem that he's going back to try and catch the ball behind the goals. And it certainly caught out the TV crew, because they put the points up on the scoreboard when we were watching at home. And also, perhaps more importantly, it went up on the stadium clock. What a mess this is.
It's a huge mess, and I would just be very interested to know what the process is around this, because we've seen before, let's say with the ball that just might tinker over the crossbar, and it gets pulled back in open play for a point. You saw that with Brian Hogan a couple of years ago, actually ironically back in 2019 versus Wexford. Do you remember that? So there's a process there to give a score. Let's say when it's not given. I've never seen the reverse of it. Do you know what I mean? In the sense, I've never seen play on like that. So if there was a score given and it was kind of common knowledge throughout the stadium, and even the people doing the powers that be, i.e. Hawkeye, I'm insinuating, should that not have resulted in a game stoppage? I don't know the answer to this question, Will. I just think it's very messy. And there's a clip out there. It shows Owen Murphy running to the side of the goal, where on the umpire side that is reaching for the ball. I'd imagine Owen Murphy was shouting at the umpire to give me a ball, give me a ball. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like in the same, because everyone does it, give me the ball, and the umpire raises up his hand innocently to take the ball down from a height and give it to Owen. And it's just kind of it's a calamity of errors, I think, Will, to be honest. But you're on about the CCC. It always catches me out. That's CCC, whatever.
The quadruple C.
Yeah, right. So let's just say the referee's report acknowledges there's an error, okay? And the wider public, the GAA acknowledges an error. What's going to happen over it? Do you genuinely think? I'm going to ask this question to Murph, right? I don't personally. I don't think anyone at the Kilkenny team would be shouting for replay. I don't personally. I don't think the issue or the incident is as such a gravity that it warrants a replay. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Now, where replay comes into it is if there's too many men in the field or something like that kind of stuff.
Oh, you best believe if this was my county, we would be still sitting in Croke Park right now. You'd be trying to kick us out tonight after what's happened.
You boys, but that was that was time, which is different. I agree with you there. Let's say, but there was 4 or 5 minutes left here. Now I will say, and I'm wearing white. Okay, I'm taking a neutral approach. I don't want any war off anyone, Kilkenny or Tipperary. I'm just saying what I think. Okay, if you're 3 points down, I will state, if you're going for a goal when time is against you, going for 3 points, i.e. going for the goal, is way harder than tackling on a point or two with a man up, right? Because it changes your whole scheme. It changes your whole schematic in terms of the ball delivery. And when you get the ball in the forwards, you can see yourself, the whole play becomes, play after play after play, phase after phase to get a shot on goal, right? So I would just like to think if the mindset of the Kilkenny players was, we have 2 points to get, you can see more shots. You can definitely see more shots when you puck out. It just changes things, okay? But in the same breath, I will say I thought Tipperary was the better team. So I can acknowledge the mistake. I can acknowledge that Kilkenny would have obviously adapted their style or their pattern of play for the last couple of minutes. But in the same breath, I can say that Tipperary were the better team for me, and that the result is fair. So when you piece all them together, I think the report will come out. It'll acknowledge the mistake, but ultimately we'll end up with the same teams in the final.
Yeah, so it seems, before I go to the Kilkenny jury on this, it would seem that if we're looking for a precedent here, generally the referee's report will always be final. So that's the score. The issue here is this is a slightly weirder one, whereby the impact is fundamentally within the game, because if you're a player, you're understandably going to look up at that scoreboard either on the big screen or the one down the far end. So if you're attacking, you see 31 points are up on, or 21 points are up on the board. You think that you're a point further behind at that stage. And so from Kilkenny's perspective, instead of potentially pucking over the ball and hoping to win the puck out in those last 2 minutes especially, you're deciding that actually they need to work a goal, rather than thinking that they're actually within the 3 points when that happens. So I can totally understand where the players will be coming from here. Like, if you're looking up, I guess you have to kind of assume that the scoreboard within the stadium is correct. So again, we've had a look at it, and it would appear that the reason that this is so confusing for the audience at home is that it looks like the umpire on the near side has actually indicated a point. Noel McGrath has celebrated. So again, it looks like when they cut to him as if the point has gone over and it's been acknowledged. Because a few people sent me the rule around this, which was, if I can go back and quote it here, was I think 7.10, which was that it can become an issue if the referee has, I'll give you the exact reading, an objection or counter-objection may only be upheld on the grounds that, Clause 2, a score allowed by the referee was not recorded by him, or that a score was incorrectly recorded by him. So in this case, there's actually not a score recorded by James Owens at all. If James Owens' report is that that game finished up on 20 points at the end as opposed to 21, James Owens has clearly marked that as a white.
Yeah. It's the same as if you're at club ground and the lad who's just manning the scoreboard marks it down wrong. It's nothing to do with the referee or the officials. They're not really in charge. They're not in charge of the scoreboard. But it was a very unusual one, because I actually didn't know anything had happened until after the game. People were saying it after the game, even after we finished with the BBC with the analysis, someone said about the scoreboard. And I said, what about the scoreboard? And she said it was wrong. I was like, how is the scoreboard wrong in the stadium? But when you watch it back, I can see how, I'm not explaining why it happened, but I can see where it happened, obviously, as we all can. It's so unusual that an umpire throws the hand up. But like, the umpire should be aware that when a ball is in midair in Croke Park, some people watch the flight of the ball. The rest of the people look to see, is the umpire scrambling to go, okay, or is he putting the hand up or whatever? So how something like that overall happened, because after the game, funnily enough, a few people were saying that during the game, people were relaying this message that the scoreboard is now wrong. So it's just such a strange one for us to be talking about afterwards. But I will agree, like, there's two things here. It's not a time issue. It's a scoreboard issue. So whereby, let's say you actually reference it, Offaly and Clare.
Yeah.
That's a time issue. That's very black and white. That's, you didn't give us the time allotted to go and win the match. This one's way more subjective. And Kilkenny won't appeal this. Like, Kilkenny won't go, whatever. There's merit in saying that, yeah, of course, players would have changed what they were doing. They were quite obviously going for goals, but at the same time, 3 points, 4 points, you can still go for points when it's 4 points. With there was 4 or 5 minutes to go and Kilkenny started going for goals, I would say.
Can I just play devil's advocate for a second? And this isn't trying to poke at you here, but it's now going to be 11 years since Kilkenny have won an All-Ireland final. This is their longest run since the first time they won it without one. If there are people within Kilkenny County Board who can look at this and potentially seize upon an interpretation of a rule, is the county too proud to put in an appeal?
It's not a case that's too proud to bring in. Like, as I'm saying again, it's subjective. Like, as in, this is a case where the scoreboard is wrong. There's nothing to say the players on the field actually knew the score or whatever. Kilkenny aren't going to appeal this. Like, I would be saying, sitting here now, Sunday night, as of 8:45, I don't see Kilkenny appealing this. Now, likewise, as we're saying, if this was a case where James Owens blew up the whistle, having given a minute of injury time and there actually should have been 4, well, then I'd absolutely understand any team doing it. But my first thought doesn't go to, this is 11 years since Kilkenny have won All Ireland. None of that comes into it. It just comes down to, we said last week, I thought this was a 50-50 match, and it came down to small margins. And for me, the biggest margin that happened was Oisin O'Donghue's goal, because for everything Tipperary had done with the 3 goals they scored previously, the game was just in the balance. And that, I'd say if Oisin O'Donghue tried to do that another 100 times, he wouldn't have done it. It was just everything about it, when you go back and look, it could have not happened in so many, like he could have got a block, he could have got a hook, he could have got
You're a defender here, though. Surely, like Paddy Deegan particularly, should deal with that, and Kilkenny should get that ball out.
I'll be honest, right? Was this not for a block or something? Was this Paddy Deegan out further?
Yeah.
So I'm coming straight from Croke Park. I haven't seen a replay of it. Genuinely, it's not passing the book. My only thing when I saw the goal, when I've seen replays online, I thought one of the defenders might have got a block to it. But I was at the game. I didn't see a replay. I saw Oisin O'Donghue's goal replayed, the little snippet, about 10 times. But I actually haven't seen anything with the defending. There was a few stages, like Jason Ford's point, Richie Reid was coming out, and he could have moved the ball on and he got blocked. I can't even remember who blocked him at that stage. But Jason Ford's point, for example, after that goal, like again, defending should have. There was a few instances there where the defending, if it was a little bit more clinical, would have avoided all these. And it's easy to say it now, but no, I take your point about Paddy Deegan. I just don't remember, because we're doing this very fresh afterwards, to be honest.
Yeah, like it's a wonder strike, Skehill. I'm not taking away from that for a second. I think we were thinking it may have got a little bit of a touch on the way through, but like he's picked his spot and he's absolutely walloped that into the top corner, which is what you need to do to beat Owen Murphy. But Kilkenny will feel it should have been preventable, though, no?
Oh, yeah. Look, I know I can appreciate, Murph, as you're in the hotel, Murph. You haven't had the advantage that we have had in terms of looking at the replays.
Yeah.
But I will say, when you get a chance to look back at it again, Darren McCarthy gets sent off on 58 minutes, right? Tipp score 1-4, Kilkenny scored 4 points. Now, the 1-4 Tipperary scored, i.e. what Kilkenny conceded, I would personally put 1-2 down to ball that was in Kilkenny's control and they let it off. Do you know what I mean? They got turned over, whether through that was minor complacency or just lack of concentration. It's just it's a disappointing way for the game for them to unfold, really. But O'Donoghue's goal in itself was his youthful exuberance. He had no right to take it on. Do you know what I mean? To be fair, like, and if you study the goal really closely, and I've slowed it right down, somebody, I think it's Mikey Keary, gets the slightest touch on the sliotar. As Oisin throws up the ball, the little touch happens, and he still gets the strike away and roofs it. And like, there's a beautiful behind the goal shot. These shots are coming. They're becoming more and more apparent now. I'd say from behind the goal, showing these obviously your pitch level action shot from the far side, and you can see. I think it's Andrew Armand puts the hand up the minute O'Donnell strikes. He puts the hand up, so it's like when that ball is leaving the hurl, it's a green flag. What a way to win it! Savage way to win it. And ultimately, then even with that, you look back and Kilkenny had opportunities. They had opportunities to the John Donnelly one at the end. Robert Doyle saved it. He obviously, you're in the heat at the moment. If that goes low, does it go in? There's so many questions that I have. You know what I mean? But as I said to you, I can't fault Tipperary. Like, when you go down a man, albeit a forward, I can respect that, and you still outscored the opposition. Like, it's amazing. You know what I mean? It's amazing. In fairness, it's like we lauded Dublin. Don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing apples with apples here. Okay, we did laud Dublin for going a man down, but I'm still putting great emphasis on the fact that Tipperary went a man down. But Kilkenny, in the same fact, they changed their system a bit. Like when you go a man up, right, you have to utilize the numerical advantage. Like, you cannot be putting the ball down long on top of a Tipperary defence or a Kilkenny attack where there's numerical parity, where you don't have an advantage. So like the likes of puck outs or long or balls from the defence going long, you're only feeding into the opposition. You know what I mean? Like I feel, Murphy, you can correct me here. I don't know how it's like pitch side now for you, but if everything, even from the puck out phase, if you can get into the middle area, let's say, get the ball from your puck out into your full back line or half back line, into the middle, shooting chance. Do you know what I mean? That's where you've got the numerical advantage. When you start pucking it long, it doesn't work for you. And they mopped it up, lad. So,
yeah. No, I like, there definitely was. There was times there, even with Tipperary puck out, like Rhys Shelley was picking out lads. Even there was definitely one or two puck outs. One definitely where he was picking out an open Tipperary player. And you're saying when you have an extra man, there should not be a Tipperary player free. Everybody just pushes onto their players, and you let your spare man, who's going to be Richie Reid or whoever, sit around that midfield and push up a small bit if he wants or whatever he wants to do. But at that stage, when you have the numerical advantage, and I'd agree with you as well, the long ball down, like it's just when you're there, obviously going to sit back.
It happened too often, Murph. It just happened too often. It meant the Tipp could reset.
Tipp could reset, and Tipp took a lot of oxygen from the likes of, again, we go back to those turnovers as well, where we were in possession of the ball, we went to move it out, and either a mishandling, a bad pass, a bit of complacency, and they turned it over, and they invariably got scores off them. So, and like every time when you were looking to see that, those small balances, or those small, like challenges or different duels that happen, particularly after an event where a player gets sent off, they mean way more. And then when it goes in the favour of the team who's a man down, you just get this feeling of, I think, let's say Tipperary will be going, I think we're going to do this. Like, as in all these little breaks are going our way. And like for me, Jason Ford's point, to go back to, like, all the goals are fantastic. Yeah. But that was really a pinnacle in terms of, like, if you think about it, he took over from Darren McCarthy with the frees. And like Darren McCarthy hit 2 in a row, I think, wide. Jason Ford stepped over 2 frees, definitely. I think he was fairly in front of us. We were in Hogan's stand down near the front, and he was on around the 45 near the sideline, and there were 2 bullets. He struck them out off up into Hill 16. Like, he wasn't looking to tap this over or whatever, but the point he got, like, he was setting for that, trying to think who it was coming back. It wasn't Andrew, it might have been Andrew Ormond that actually fed it back to him, but he had no space to go. He had to put elevation on it. He had to put it up into the air because there was lads coming in blocking, but that was such a brilliant point at a brilliant time of the game as well. So, like, for me, that was, if I was picking out 3 scores of the game, that point is definitely one of them.
Yeah, they're energy-giving moments at a time when you're in adversity, when you're a man down. Like the first half, I know the score's right up a bit for Tipperary. It was 6 or 7 points over a prolonged period of time in the second half. But 3-11 from play in the first half as well, Skehill, was very, very impressive stuff.
I'd remove the word impressive and I put in outrageous. To be fair, if you get 20 points from play, or be 3 goals, 20 points from play, that would signify one or two things. You're absolutely in a phase of utter domination, or you're playing a team much weaker than that. And it was neither. It was like, when you consider that they were 10 points to 1-2 down, was that the case? I think it was around that. So
Kilkenny 8-1 or something.
Kilkenny were great in the first quarter.
They rattled off. Do you know, this is gas, right? Did you think, Murph, when the rain came down, it affected Kilkenny a bit, the slickness?
No, not really, to be honest. What did I think now affected Kilkenny? Like,
I'm not deflecting now. I'm
wrong, but not at all. No, like, Kilkenny were moving really well, and then what for me got it was, like, Kilkenny would go up and get 3 really good points working the ball, and Tipperary would lump a long ball down. Suddenly it breaks out. Now, it was fortuitous, John McGrath, the way that Jake Morris was being blocked, and John McGrath happened to just land with the ball, and it was outrageous finish, top corner, brilliant. But they got a goal that suddenly brings them into it. Darren McCarthy's goal then as well, and then also Jason Ford's goal. Like, for every time, like, long, like, generally without, except for, I'm trying to think back now, except for Darren McCarthy's goal, the other ones were long balls coming in. Really, I think I'm correct in saying that. Long balls coming in, breakaway, goal, and like Kilkenny were after doing good work up the far end. So I just found that, didn't notice too much about that. I just noticed that, you know, for all the good hurling Kilkenny were doing, Tipperary suddenly get the goals. And I said it to Jason Ford after the game, because again, you know the way players come over now and they do kind of live off the cuff interviews. And I just said, like, did you take a huge amount from that? And he was like, yeah. He said, like, Kilkenny started really well, and then we found ourselves hitting the back of the net, and suddenly you start to settle, and then second goal comes along fairly quickly soon after, and they suddenly go, for all the hurling that Kilkenny are after doing here, and they were dominant in the first quarter, Tipperary suddenly swung back in their favour, and like they were 8 points down maybe at one stage, and suddenly it swings around and they're up by 4 or 5, and it was just like that big swing. I think Tipperary just kind of went, right, look at, you know, we mightn't have been playing fantastic hurling in different stages here, but, you know, things are starting to go our way here, and they were creating opportunities to go their way. So I didn't notice anything about the weather. It was definitely.
I just thought there was a major intention on behalf of Tipperary that they needed to source goals. Like if you go back through history, when Tipperary play Kilkenny in these big games, like more often than not, they hit 3 and 4 goals. You know what I mean? Or 2 or 3 goals, should I say? Like, and because it's required, it's needed, you know, and. So the intention was there, and I suppose in the first half alone, obviously they got 3, but I can think of 2 more opportunities, not a third, where they were trying to go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're talking about, in essence, 6 goal opportunities versus Kilkenny maybe got 1 that someone like Mullen or Billy Ryan was fouled. So the intention was right there from the off, you know. And I just think the game kind of changed slightly when Tipperary were trying to play a bit of a man marking job from the very beginning. Kilkenny's formation was different to what we'd expect. The way it was named from 10 to 15 was probably pretty orthodox names that we expect people in those positions, but they didn't start that way from what it looked like on the TV, Murph. It looked like, you know, Owen Cody was in the half forward line, Mossy was in the full forward line. You know, it just looked kind of a bit, I suppose, scattered at the moment and trying to get Tipperary out of the comfort zone. Once Tipp kind of adopted their own approach in terms of set structure, they were comfortable with Connelly out the pitch. You know what I mean? And they just pushed up. So they pushed up man to man. They didn't allow space for the likes of Mullen to get on. They didn't allow
Yeah.
Kilkenny to operate, who's been a very influential performer for Kilkenny this year, to be fair. And then they started to get traction from their own attacks. So, like, when you have Owen Connelly come up with, I don't know, 2 or 3 points, I can't remember what he got.
You got 3 from play, yeah.
Yeah, in the first half, at times they were needed. We need a point here, we need a point there, and you get it from your fullback, who obviously is not accustomed to that position, but he's doing a job pushing up on a man, and they get fruition off it. And then Stakeham as well coming along, heading for the attack. Someone I didn't expect to be getting multiple scores in the first half, and he comes up. So the players that you were not expecting to get the scores in the middle of the park were getting them. So that means that Tipperary were staying well within the fight, and then you expect your big boys, I'm seeing McCarthy, Ford, McGrath, to come up with goals, and look what they did. So it was a very impressive game, you could say, in terms of entertainment. But I would just say Kilkenny, from that perspective, they'd look at the goal chances and they'll think, Jesus, they were certainly avoidable, Murph, to be fair. Because there wasn't a sense where you got absolutely opened, ripped from 60 yards out, where the team ran through like a knife through butter. Excuse me.
Sounds like Saturday. Go on.
But they were avoidable. You can take one maybe, but Jason, when it's 2 and 3, you're saying, fuck, Like there was a good like graphic shown at halftime with regards to Hugh Lawler, Murph, how Tipperary just got him out of his zone. They took him out of the D, the small D, that they got him out of that area, brought him, let's say, for a spin around, and then put the ball in over, which was a very, very effective tactic, because the one ball that went down top of him, he soared over everybody.
Yeah.
And got it. So when you take him out of his comfort zone, you kind of take away his best strength, which is frontal defending, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
As opposed to return defending. So it was a clever tactical display and plan from Tipperary, well executed.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anyone was expecting that Owen Connelly was going to outscore Owen Cody, you would have thought that Connelly would do so with long range frees. But no, 3 points from play. Just some going. Again, as you said, that kind of sharpshooting is required if you need to spread it around, because Tipp didn't actually get as much of a return from all of the forwards as they did, say, in the Galway game, or even some of the other games where they pretty much all scored. But again, if you can get, was it 1-5 from forward, 4 frees, John McGrath 1-2 from play, Darren McCarthy got a goal, missed a couple of frees but scored 2 of them before he was sent off, Jake Morris with 4 from play, and then Oisin O'Donghue coming on to score that goal as well, and Conor Stakeham, as you mentioned, adding 3 points from play. It's a decent range of scores. Why did Kilkenny not kick on and finish out the game, Murph? Because again, that period in the second half, I was just having a quick look at my score notes here, it was 8 out of 11 points that they scored in that period after half time, and it really felt like Kilkenny were hitting for home, and then McCarthy gets the second yellow, which is, I suppose, just silly to go in on Murphy the way he did to pick up the second yellow. Why do Kilkenny not close the game out from that point?
Well, like, Tipp just reacted in terms of upping their intensity after that, very much knowing they're down a man, and I would say Kilkenny just maintained the standard they were playing at, and during that period, it probably goes back to the point we were making earlier, where then, even though Kilkenny had the extra man, they used it quite well in some instances where they actually found the extra man, but other times they were lumping the ball down long. You saw them, Tipperary, coming back up the field, and Kilkenny turning over balls to Tipperary. So I think, regardless when you go about the structural elements of it, or who's this free man or whatever, when you look at both sides, Tipperary upped their intensity. Tipperary were very clinical in terms of whatever ball they had, they used it really well. But Kilkenny got a little bit wasteful during that period. Like, I think after Darren McCarthy was sent off, I think Richie Reid took a shot from distance. He was out over near the sideline, and he just lumped one wide. And people were like, "We have the extra man. Do you know? Like, bring it back in. Look for the extra man." I think Jordan Malloy, he was picked up out on the far side. He had plenty of time, and he landed it into Rhys Shelley's hands. And it's like, you were the spare man there. When as you look down the far end, anything that broke at all that Tipperary had, they were clinical, and they needed to be at the same time. And if you're talking about the emotional side of it then, or the psychological side of it, suddenly you're a man down, but things are going your way. Like, you're reacting, and the Tipperary crowd were very loud. Like, they were driving the team on, and I've seen 1 or 2 players speak about it afterwards. So the way I just looked at it is, okay, you're down a man, but what was left? 10 minutes? Was it 10 minutes to go at that stage?
16,
it was
16 minutes.
About that, yeah.
In that 16
in
that 16 minutes, they really upped their work rate. They really went for it. The crowd got behind them. And for me, like anything that they got, they negated the spare man really with Kilkenny. And I think I saw Derek Ling say it after the game as well, where he just felt that they didn't use the spare man themselves to the best of their ability, which is a very honest opinion out of him. I think it was actually an off-the-ball interview, but he just said, look, we didn't utilise it. And that's exactly it. Do you know what? Sometimes you can, I suppose, try and dissect these things and overcomplicate it. They just didn't use the spare man to the best of their ability. And when Tipperary, things kept coming off from, particularly that Donoghue goal, like if Tipperary don't get a goal there, I'm wondering did Tipperary win the match. But when they got that goal and suddenly jumped ahead by, I think, 3 at that stage, who knows what the scoreboard, it could have been 3, it could have been 2, it could have been 4. But when they jumped ahead at that stage, that was really the moment where he went, oh, they could really do this. Like Shamie Callan was behind me and he was like, I think we're going to do this. Like, you know, so it was a culmination for me of quite a few bits. And it was, you know, Kilkenny's downfall was those turnovers, not utilising spare man to the best of their ability, and then not being clinical enough with the balls you did have.
Well, if you go back,
go on, Scott.
Sorry, Will. I'm just thinking like the last time Tipperary in the semi-final of 2019, cast your mind back, John McGrath was sent off.
Yeah.
Right. He was sent off in the 45th minute that time for a pull, right? So there was obviously 25 and more minutes left in that game. And Wexford, and I've been highly critical of them since. You know,
the argument always was that Wexford should have pushed on and taken control.
And they pumped the ball long after long. And I can just vividly remember Ronan Maher and Porrick Maher coming out with ball after ball after ball. Do you know what I mean? And that game.
Yeah.
And this not as bad as that now much, but this has that feel of it too. It's just that the spare man, let's say, wasn't utilised. And I personally found that when I was looking at your spare man, there's no point in him being in the full back line. There's no point in him being situated on the 21-yard line. There was 0 point for that. 0. I mean, so sometimes what opposition teams do when you have a spare man is they try to give it to your full back line. And they try to pull everyone back. That's where you have to pull numbers back in again. Do you know what I mean? Pull lads into your 45, into your 65. And that just didn't happen. So that's what results in the long ball game. You know, that's where your 6 is so important. So important to come back in. Because they all get sucked up the pitch. That's why you see Rhys Shelley be able to hit balls into your 65 in the last 10, 15 minutes. Because that's where all the tip lads were obviously catered. There's nobody inside their 45 or inside the Kilkenny 45. It's a game within a game. Like, and the question I ask is straight up is if Tipperary had 15 men on the pitch for the rest of the game, who wins? And I tell you, I can't answer. You know what I mean?
It's an interesting one. Someone said that previously that there was notable, I suppose, increase in Tipperary's performance when they went down a man. And there were some lads coming out of Crow Park going, "Geez, it would have been interesting to see if Tipperary actually stayed with 15 on. Would they have kicked on? You'd probably say they wouldn't have. Like they may have won the match, Kilkenny may have won the match, whatever. But it's funny that something perceived negative at the time probably was the thing that spurred them on to actually go and win the game. So it's. Yeah.
Is it also possible, though, that Kilkenny might have changed their approach if there was 15 men on the pitch as well? Because, like, based on what you said there, Skell, it's almost like as if Kilkenny had decided, right, if we have an extra player to deploy, and they were picking off scores around before McCarthy was sent off, maybe they feel, actually, we'll keep an extra man around the kind of, I'm going to call it, say, the edge of your final third. We'll have that extra man around the half-back line. We'll try and push out from there. We'll keep things nice and steady, and we won't cough up chances at our end. While if that was 15 on 15, maybe Kilkenny looked to set the agenda a bit more, rather than like something that kind of very naturally happened, which is safety first. We'll just have an extra safety net as our extra man.
I get that. Like I say, but where was the game being played? I'm not talking about the pitch now, but I'm talking about, okay, you take the Oisin O'Donghue goal of it, right? That's one of the few, I suppose, scores that was conceded that was in that kind of central zone. Do you know what I mean? In front of the goal, do you get me? Let's say 30 yards out. But like a lot of the damage was being done, let's say, from the Kilkenny halfback line, the 45, draw a big Arcton wheel around the midfield and back into the 45. That kind of area there. That's where the damage is like. So I can understand the concept of, like, and every team does it. The minute you have a spare man, you automatically think defence first. Automatically. You automatically say, I'm going to outnumber the attack here, snuff them 2-1, and then they won't be able to score, and we'll be able to work it up the pitch. Sometimes I'd be thinking, yeah, but you still have numerical parity up in your attack. You still give them an advantage to a degree. So when that kind of materialised, I was thinking, why not just pull, one of your forwards out further, create, like, I would say 4 in your half-back line or 3
an extra man in the middle, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And pull out the Tipperary backs. Do not allow them to be set. Do you know what I mean? And this is very simple. It's very similar to what happened against between Limerick and Dublin, where the Limerick lads just they set their spare man in front of the D. That's not what the damage was occurring though. The D against Dublin was not the issue. It was out in the middle third of the pitch. So, and for me, let's say the issue for Kilkenny was the deliveries was a killer. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but the deliveries was not good. It wasn't Kilkenny-esque. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've seen so much this year of the ball being popped out to Mikey Carey, popped out to Adrian Mullen, Jordan, like Kilkenny, and they're playing, let's say, that way. Do you know what I mean? As opposed to lump. That just associates Kilkenny. It happens the odd time, of course, yeah, like every game, but not kind of repetitively. And I just thought it was just a systematic issue that could have been avoided, to be honest. And I thought with such, again, not to be disparate, with such seniority on the team, I thought that would be copped on after the first couple. Do you know what I mean? You can say a wild shot or a wild delivery. Fair enough. Okay, now we've learned a lesson. Cop on now and use the ball short. It didn't happen. Do you know what I mean? And I'd say if you look back in the game from as I said, from a senior perspective, looking at the lads who were there for 10 years plus, to say, they'd be saying, was the opportunity there to change things slightly and go short, and would the game be a different result? Like, who knows, of course, but just it's, as I say, Murph, it's the game within the game. It's easy for me to talk here. Very simple for me to talk. Okay, very hard to do it. Very hard to do it in the pitch, but.
Well, the other thing as well is, Murph, you've said this before, and again, we're talking about the Noel McGrath point that's going up on the scoreboard and on the TV coverage as a point. A big part of that is when you listen back to the clip with the noise, it's just the noise around Croke Park which makes it very difficult to hear anything. Like, even if you're a leader within the team and you're trying to indicate, like, just push up a little bit or let's move around. Like, even Tommy was talking last night when he was talking to Tommy Welsh, this was saying that part of what made Cork so impressive was that Cork's interplay seemed to happen without them having to talk to each other. That it was like they knew where to go, and it was almost like a second nature that if you go in, I'll come back out and I'll make space for you. He was like, if you're down pitch side, there is no way that you could hear Brian Hayes is giving a shout to Alan Connelly or Connelly is told O'Mahony. It's like these guys actually know where you're meant to be.
Yeah, and it does have to be this way. We've spoken about this several times, but I had two examples from the weekend. One was today, Billy Ryan, I think, rolled his ankle or something. He was out around midfield. We'll call it pretty much on the midfield line where the ball is thrown in. Derek Ling was in front of us. We were right up against the barrier near where the Kilkenny dugout was. And Derek was shouting at Billy Ryan because he wanted to relay a message to him. Billy Ryan never flinched, couldn't hear a word of it. And the other thing I'd say then is we were speaking to Patrick Horgan then. So again, likewise, after the game yesterday, Hoggy came down, we were chatting to him. And one of the things we picked up on in the Cork match was that they were just like, Tim O'Mahony got a ball 45 yards out, and you could tell he was running for goal. I was like, is this something you spoke about before the game, or was it something instinctual in the moment where you're like, we kind of have this Dublin team rattled? And Hoggy said, no, he said it was very much just a case of, you see green grass in front of you, run into it. There's nobody in there, run in at it and see if they come at you, and if not, take a score. So it was very much for them, it was that instinctual thing of, let's say Brian Hayes gets the ball, turns, and the rest of the boys, Alan Connelly, whoever, they're looking going, he has green grass in front of him, he is open, he's going for it. So they're all running. That is much more functional than saying, listen, lads, I'm going to call you to go here. Stephen Skehill said this the other day, you can't do it in Croke Park. It just does not happen. So if your game plan, for example, and this is probably drawing it out a bit further, if your game plan, you're going down, let's say Kilkenny are playing Wexford in Wexford Park, and it's a league match, and everybody can hear each other, and your game plan is reliant on communication of shouting here, there, that really diminishes when you go to Croke Park. It has to be very simple stuff that requires communication. Everything else very much is body language. It's short communication in terms of shouting a lad's name so you get his attention and pointing at a player, whatever it is. So really, like, those differences there, but particularly for Cork, and Tommy mentioned it, it was one thing that was very evident yesterday, because yesterday was even louder than today. It was I'd say it was 80,000 maybe. There was a scattering of a few free seats, I think, but 80,000 people. There was nobody communicating that in there. And Neil O'Callaghan was in front of us, and in order for them to talk constantly, Conor Burke was coming over, or Conor McHugh, they had to run all the ways over to the sideline just to have a quick conversation, because in a club match, you'll do that from centre back or centre forward or whatever, but you can't do it there.
What you're saying is it was particularly harsh that Dotsy got booked for walking out onto the field as the water carrier, because clearly he was the message relayer.
It's not even harsh, it's just ridiculous booking the man. Like, I know they're saying it's a rule and stuff, but Dotsy O'Callaghan is not going onto the field jostling lads or Anthony. He's relaying a message, and he's like, he can't hear me and he has to run out. Book him. Like, no, I won't even get into that one, because that was absolutely ridiculous.
I just think, and again, I'm not meaning to get off Kilkenny and Tipp, we're very much on that train at the moment, but when I was watching even on TV, I was thinking, this isn't even a case of multiple infractions from him, because it's so early on in the game. Like, you easily could have walked over as well and said, look, Dotsy, you're coming out over the line a bit too often, or, I want you to stay inside there, you have to stay within your role, have a quick chat with him. Going over to book him just seemed mad scale.
It's a waste of time. Well, and we see between. Sorry, Murph, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll throw another one in and give it back to Skehill then. Peter Barry ran across the field. Jordan Malloy, I think, broke his hurl. The first clash of hurls we've seen in a while of ground hurling. Two boys clash. Jordan Malloy broke the hurl. Peter Barry sprinted in, handed him a hurl and kept going to the far side. And James Owens was mouting at him going across. I say mouting at him, he was giving out to him. Peter Barry turned to him and showed him the broken hurl. He was like, I'm giving a lad a hurl, what do you want him to run over to me? He stays on the field and I stay on the sideline or something. There's stuff like that. I understand. There was times there where a few years ago there was ridiculous things happening where water carriers were coming on and flinging bottles of water on whatever. Grant Dotsie O'Callaghan was doing nothing, Peter Barry was doing nothing, but they were getting clipped running onto the field. I was like, sorry, Skehill, back to you there.
No, I agree with you, Murph, and I'm glad you brought the example too, because some things you can differentiate between a necessary act and an unnecessary act. So if you've got a medic or a physio or a hurley carrier bring on a hurl after a broken hurl, you know what I mean? That's a necessary act for me. That's a part of the game. That requires either A, medical attention, or B, your equipment is faulty, or you need a job. There was plenty of unnecessary acts going back a couple of years ago, which I'd be very strong on, to be fair, because there was infractions, and it was kind of getting a bit mad. Right? And I can particularly remember an incident below Nolan Park where one of the Dublin selection team caught a free, I think.
I remember that. Yeah.
We took a free.
Yeah, that to me is a different level.
It's a yellow, all right.
So that let's call it an unnecessary act. Okay, he shouldn't have been there, and then played innocent. I know who caught it, right? He's my neighbour, but
it was a good catch as well. The ball was traveling. It was a good catch.
He should have done it. But my point being is, that's he stepped on the pitch to get I suppose to get a message or receive a message. You know what I mean? That's not infractious. That's not doing anything to the opposition. That didn't stem Cork's flow. That didn't get in their face and push plans in jeopardy per se. So it's a needless act.
Yeah. But you've won the mayor or worn even the mayor Ishka bib. Were you a guy who was constantly infringing on the pitch?
Constantly booked.
Yeah,
I was constantly booked because I just didn't listen to them. Because if a young fella says to me, I need water, I would sprint on to the pitch and get water. Give him water. I've been told by the referee, get off the pitch. Linesman says, you can't go on the pitch. I'll say, I'm giving him water. I'm not going to flip and not give it to him when he wants it, right? And then next thing, I have a hurl broken. I go on with the hurl. I told you to get off the pitch, booked. Okay, here I am. Again, irrelevant. I'm not going to stop. So.
Now, were you as pure as you're making out here? Were you just walking on literally going, here's a bit of H2O, here's a hurl? Or were you actually walking on going, move to here, or tell number 6 to move, whatever? Were you actually trying to get instruction on the Zenta?
I was completely trying to get instruction on.
Yeah, of course you were.
Yeah, I was as they say in the NFL, I was mic'd up, okay, at the earpiece on, which in underage hurling you're not allowed to actually have. The linesmen are constantly watching for your hurley carriers. You can't have the earpiece in underage hurling.
So why is that?
It's ridiculous. I don't know why. I just don't get it. So the likes of Niall Kellycon has the earpiece in the ear, right?
Yeah.
He's hooked up to either his medical staff and the mayor commands or whatever you call it, right? But in underage hurling you can't. So I vividly remember a semi-final, in a minor semi-final below Limerick against Tipp, and I'm it's a roasting hot day, and I have a hat on, a woolly hat, trying to conceal the earpiece, and I'm roasting, lads. I am dying inside.
But I tried a random one here now. I only thought of it as it was coming out of or I just thought of it there now. We were coming out of Croke Park this evening, and obviously we were passing up. We actually stopped chatting to a load of Tipperary people or Kilkenny people or wherever on the way. But a Tipperary lad came up to me. Now I'm sure he's listening. I didn't catch his name. We were chatting away anyway. I wished him best luck in the final. But he came up to me and he goes, "Hey, Skehill won't like that one." I thought he was going to say it to me. "Oh, you want to? Skehill won't like that." And I went, in his defence, I'm the Kilkenny man here. He actually doesn't care about this. But then he started laughing, in fairness. But I said, it's mad that your first thought there was not, oh yeah, Jesus, Paul Murphy isn't going to like this. It was like, James Skehill won't like the Tipperary one today. But I defended you, and in fairness, you went, oh yeah, that's a fair point.
The reason being, Murphy, is I said what you think. When I said those words go back a couple of years ago, when I said about Tipp, you were thinking it. Today you're thinking it anyway.
And actually, before we go back onto the topic, I have to give the shout out. I said the voice note to you yesterday to Declan and all the ground staff in Croke Park. The ground staff in Croke Park listen to the pod. Well, I don't know. I can't speak for all of them. But they were actually saying, could you make the pod a small bit longer? Because apparently an hour 40 or 2 hours that we give out, their jobs go past that. So they're like, it's not long enough. But they wanted a shout out. So Declan and all the lads, all the ground staff in Croke Park, fair play. I was standing beside the field yesterday taking a picture. I was on the Astro. I wasn't on the field, nothing like that. And next thing, the lad with a pitchfork starts coming across at me. And I was going, oh, jeez. Oh, I do. No, he had a pitchfork. He had, no, do you ever see the Croke Park pitchforks? They're like the size of your hand. They're about that big, and they just prod away at the ground. And I was like, I'm not doing anything. Like, I mean, I'm taking a picture of Crow. And he goes, hey, love the pod. He goes, will you give us a shout out there? Will you give a shout out to all the ground staff? And I was like, Declan, I thought you were going to give out to me. No, why did you think that? I said, because you give out to me the whole time, or you give out to all of us the whole time. He was like, we're not that bad. I was like, you're not. So just give the shout out there while we think of it, because I won't
reach as far and wide.
It sure does.
I just think it's interesting that
it's good to think we're getting people through the workday.
Well, like the ground staff in the Holy Grail that is Crow Park on a Monday or Tuesday morning when
they're 38 minutes into getting the pitch ready for the Gaelic football this weekend.
That's exactly it. They're in here now. There's seagulls overhead, and they're listening to us, and then they're getting ready for the football or Oasis or whatever they're getting ready for.
Yeah, they need to get one of those scarecrow things to keep the seagulls away. They're more and more prevalent every year, it seems.
They have, I know, promise, this is the last tangent before we go back.
It's okay. Some people love them, some people hate them. Who cares?
They have a lad up there who has, if you ever notice it, like literally, let's say the game finished today at 5:30. By 6 o'clock, suddenly there was a plague of seagulls. I don't know what the collective term for a hindrance of seagulls is, but there was a plague of them. But there's a lad, I'm fairly sure, who flies like a falcon around. He's not your man from Tala that presented Seamus Hickey down the match a few years ago. But there's a lad who flies one of these around. So like during it, there's not that many around, is my understanding. And then obviously the game's over. They go, right, bring him in. And suddenly 5,000 seagulls converge on Crow Park, and it's absolutely carnage.
So, just for knowledge on this pod, before Skehill comes in, it can either be a flock or a colony of seagulls. So you get a colony of seagulls. Sorry, Skehill, go on.
I'm not sure should I even say this.
Uh-oh.
Fuck it. The country approach, right? So that kind of what I class as vermin control, Murph, right?
I can see where this is going already, but go on.
You already pissed people off a few weeks ago saying that you were shooting foxes, but anyway, go on.
Well, I'm bringing the gun back into it again. If you cut silent here, Murph, you get the crows, right? They come down top and we don't more crows. It's that simple. So,
oh god,
it's for a murder of crows to witness a murder of a crow, and they won't come back.
Neither Murph nor I endorse any of this, by the way. I really hope that this person's Twitter name is done in the same style as when I'm pretty sure Homer averted the meltdown and got a call from Magic Johnson. So this person's called Luke Magic Johnson Moore. At Will O'Callaghan, what do Skehill and Murphy think of that? Wants an official apology on the podcast this weekend, Tipperary supporter. And also, I saw someone a little bit further around saying, this is Nick Flavin, who said, anyone check in on Skehill and Canning? They must be devastated that their beloved Kilkenny have been turned over.
That's an unusual one, is it?
That's a very unusual
Canning one. As well, like Canning. And I'm not saying, but like where did Canning come into it on this show? I don't know. I'll be honest, Skehill, I defended you today anyway. I defended you. Nobody asked me anything about Canning, but
I don't mind Canning. Make sure you defend me.
You know, lads, like I'm surprised how Skehill, you're after getting 2 shots fired at you there now.
My phone has been hopping right, okay, today with lads, and the first tip lad like that came in, said to me, said, 2 tickets to Ireland, please. And I went, what? Like, as if like I'm going to get them to you. That was a kind of a subtle dig, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I prefer to call me a name.
It was a polite one, though. It was a polite one.
It was a polite one, in fairness, yeah. I just think people can they kind of get confused between my respect of the Kilkenny's kind of work ethic versus my what's your man say? Love, is it? What's he say?
Yeah. Love of Kilkenny.
Love of Kilkenny, yeah. So I don't love Kilkenny, don't hate them, but I respect, their work ethic a lot, heavily.
Is this kind of Stockholm syndrome to a certain extent that you meet them in Leinster so often now at this stage that therefore, you've become in love with your often captors and beaters there?
No, I it's not even that, because I think you have to go back to, so when I was, when Kilkenny started out their period of dominance, to be honest, in the early 2000s, right, and coming into when they stopped Cork doing the 3 in a row, it was kind of then you kind of started to look at their team as being one of the greats. And great teams have great players, right? But great players only become great when they do kind of the off the ball work really well. So like everyone will talk about Sheffield, but like having played against him and watched him enough, just he was some man to work off the ball. Do you know what I mean? Like he was a fair tackler. Like nothing came easy out of him. Do you know what I mean? If you're going through him, and the same would apply for all the Kilkenny boys. So if you have lads who are great players and they are ravenous to get the ball back, that's where the respect comes from. It wasn't from the victories were all well and good and playing against them was all well and good, but geez, man, they were. Like, and it's like it funnels down to the next crop of group of players in. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you can see it. Like even like your man Jordan Light today again. Jeez, he's a fair dinger. Like, do you know what I mean?
He's a good lad,
future. Yeah, he's a fair dinger. So that's where it comes from, Will.
Okay, so your hatred of Tipperary persists, and there's a good one for you. Well, I suppose it is.
That's from my uncles and that's
Before we move towards Cork, Skehill, because all this seems to be diverted towards you, maybe because you wore your Tipperary shirt at the roadshow and so on, and you did say I effing hate Tipp on this pod before. Does that mean that you naturally now become red and white for the next 2 weeks?
Easy now. Just go easy, Will. Okay, don't be trying to
Put on the heat on him now.
Yeah, don't be trying to get the wrath of everyone. Because if I say no, Cork people come after me. If I say yes, Tipp, they're going to come after me anyways.
I've seen two narratives develop since the game. So Brian O'Mara and who was it? Jason Ford. They were interviewed straight away. So I think either they got different man the matches or they got man the matches, and one was just interviewed afterwards. Then, but Jason Ford was on with us, and he said, "Oh yeah, sure. We're looking forward to a final. Now, sure, Cork will be raging hot favourites." And I was like, "Cork will be raging hot favourites." And then Brian O'Mara was on as well, and he was being interviewed to everybody here in Croke Park.
He was an RT as well, yeah.
And he went, look at, we're going to knuckle down now for the next 2 weeks, and Cork will be raging hot favourites. I was like, these boys are starting straight away. So that's the first team I've noticed. And the second one is Skehill's going to be supporting Cork now for the final. So I don't know.
We are. Evidently we are. Or have you decided with your wife now? Have you decided with her? And rolling behind her supporter?
She asked me can she wear a Tipperary jersey for the final. I said, no, not around the house. No. Around Croke Park, if you want. Not around the house. But so we'll have to see.
I think, there'll be immediate imprisonment if a person within the confines of the Kilkenny boundary was caught with a Tipperary jersey.
Well, I'll tell you,
immediate imprisonment.
There's a lot of mixed marriages, though, isn't there?
Oh, a huge amount. I went down to yeah, huge amount.
Just the way he said it.
I was driving down to Nina at the weekend or during the week at some stage, and as I was driving down, I was passing a place in Kilkenny, and I saw a father and a son wearing Tipperary tops. The father was wearing like a half-zip Tipperary young fella. So I was like, it's definitely the week that's in it now. These lads knew they were coming down to Kilkenny, and here they are wearing the Tipperary tops. But I was driving up then in towards Nina, and at around Ross Gray or somewhere around there was a lay-by, and here was a lad in a Kilkenny jersey, just taking a piss, basically. And I was like, there's no reason for that lad to be wearing a Kilkenny jersey up this far. So it's like, literally, I could see during the week, lads winding each other up, saying, I'm heading down. I've half an hour work in Tipperary in Mullinholm. I'm going to wear my Kilkenny jersey down to it or something. But,
and evidently, he felt the need to take a public piss on the big week of the game as well. So
I'd say he probably didn't even have to go for this. He just wanted to see all the Tipperary people passing and just stand out with a Kilkenny jersey. But it was good.
Last thing I was wondering, Skehill, on this game, does Liam Calgon have a bit of a chat with Darren McCarthy before the All-Ireland final now? Like, this is the second red that he's picked up. The one today, it felt like he was a walk-in second yellow card for a long time. So he picked up the yellow very early on, and then it's a silly slap down on the knuckles on Murphy. It's a cheap one to get booked for. I, by the way, don't think he's a dirty player or anything like that. Before anyone's insinuating that I'm going after some kind of teenager here and trying to put pressure on a young man, but he looked a very relieved man, understandably at full time, because you don't want to be the guy who got sent off and then your team lose. But I just wonder, whether it be a senior player, whether it be like Noel McGrath or whether it be Cal, just has a quick word with him about the emotion of what's going to come up in 2 weeks' time.
Do you think even a word is required at this stage?
Don't know.
I think the lesson of today, I think the 15 minutes that young lad sat in the dugout of Croke Park, that was lesson enough, I think, to be honest. I think there was because it was a fine line between the ship sailing and the ship sinking, Will, to be honest.
Yeah.
And like, if the ship did sink, right, naturally enough, what will happen is the media and even supporters within the Tipperary border would start pointing the finger towards the man being down. And Darren McCarthy would be in the spotlight. So I think what went on for that 15-20 minutes, I think he's a very relieved person. I don't think anyone needs to speak to him. I think lessons are learned through actions, and the actions he did today, let's say, and you can argue with me all you want, right? The slap in the hand we've seen throughout the history of this game, right, is the yellow card, okay? So if you're on a yellow card, it makes it even worse. Don't even do it, especially when there's no tackle. So Murphy has checked his run, right? McCarthy's going right to left. Murphy checks his run to go left to right. He's gone from you. That's it. There's no contact. You're not going to tackle him. You're not going to turn him over. Just keep your hurl to yourself. You know what I mean? That in itself, right, was just a bit of an act that can be looked back by him and say, never again. You know what I mean? If you've got a dead tackle where you get no contact, just let him go. Let the next man get it or turn around and go after him. So I think lesson has to be learned. I think the game was in a different phase. The Cork game was at the very beginning, right? Emotion was very high. Tempers are high. You know, it's all the 2 weeks of I suppose, excitement, of stress, whatever you want to call it.
You're trying to leave a mark, all that type of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So set the tone, yada, yada, yada. This game is way different, okay? I just think that it was two different sets of emotional control, Will. One was emotional control at the start of the game when things are very hyper. The second is emotional control when you know you're in danger yourself. You know it's a very high stakes game. You've got to get a card. I need to be very, very emotionally neutral here. Don't do anything silly. Okay, that's no head tackles, no pulls. You know what I mean? Don't do anything silly, and then you'll be fine. So I just think he's got educated on the twofold here this year. Now I will ask a question because I don't know the answer to this. I heard somewhere, again, I have no proof of this. If you get 2 red cards in the same championship, is there an issue?
This has been going around. I don't know. Go on.
Right.
Is it not 2 straight reds though, rather than yellows?
No, I read. Excuse me now, because I know when Dahi Burke got sent off for that infraction against Offaly, right, and then there was the potential of the issue with the Dublin game. I read somewhere. Now, forgive me, I don't know where I read it. That if he got sent off in the Dublin game, that he'd actually be banned for a whole month because there was 2 red cards in the same championship. Now that might be two straight reds. Well, you could be correct, but I would like someone just to correct me here, if at all possible. When they listen to the podcast, does the 2 yellows, albeit 2 yellows, does that still count as 2 red cards in the same championship? Is he banned? Now, I would assume if that was the case, it would have broken news already.
Well, also, I've 2 referees on WhatsApp at the moment who I was mentioning earlier on. Yeah. So I'm going to.
So in memory, I again, you can correct me. Your knowledge might be better than mine, but I don't remember anybody like in the last 25 years who got sent off twice in the championship. Yeah, you know what I mean, I just don't remember. So, but like, is there a ban in place, or is there a ban potentially going to be given? Because there's a rule in place. I have no idea, but I heard something. Maybe you might know.
Hold that thought. Live podcasting. Let's see if we get a response to this now in a second.
The one thing
I got a blue tick, so go on.
The one thing I will throw out there is Darren McCarthy's one. I actually thought the first yellow was pretty much nonsense. I know it was a bit of a slap. It was very early in the game. I was sitting with Shane McCallan first. He was very frustrated with it, but I remember I was saying my view on it was the first yellow shouldn't have happened. Now, Jackie actually said the second yellow shouldn't have happened, as in that he shouldn't have been given a yellow for it. But the thing is, I'd agree with you, Skehill, like, whatever way you got the yellow in the first one, you just have to mind yourself after that. And no good could have came from leaving the hurl out on Owen Murphy. And that's the point I'd put down to Darren McCarthy. But the first yellow that James Owens gave him, I was like, that's not a yellow. And I'd also say Paddy Deegan's tackle on the sideline on Darren McCarthy, where he pushes Darren McCarthy out over the line and Jason Ford pops over the free, he gave Paddy Deegan yellow for that. That's not a yellow. Like, as in, when we were sitting there, it would be Seth, Neil McManus, Flanagan, Shane McCallan, we were all sitting there going, none of those. And like, John, there's a kind of contentious one, you throw it out. Everyone was like, no. And like, it didn't matter whether it was Kilkenny Tipp or anything. It was like, that's not a free, this is a free. Another one that was actually, we picked up on a lot was the umpires, or not the umpires, the linesmen and the officials can't, I don't know, I'm fairly sure they can't get involved unless the referee asks their opinion. Correct. But there's ones that were creeping in big time, which we were getting really frustrated with, and it was on both sides. Player would go through a tackle. The tackler is not wrapping, he's not grabbing on, but the person who's running through with the ball grabs, we always see, grabs the arm, goes to ground, gets a free. James Owens fell for a lot of them today. But we saw one in front of us which was very obvious, and Tyler Welch could see it. And the player went over to him. It was actually, I think it was Jordan Malloy went over and said, "You saw that." And Tyler Welch can't do anything there because I'm fairly sure Owens has to go across to him. But there should nearly be something there where, if we're encouraging this, where lads are grabbing the arms and hitting the deck, but a linesman can see it. Because the one thing I will say for Owens is that it was obscure to him. It would have been visible to the linesman, but not
it's
to him.
Often, to use a rugby term, it's often on the blind side of where the referee is looking. So
there,
if an official or a linesman can see
I asked the referee there in the league final, Shane Hines, who he's on the circuit, right? An incident happened in front of me, and I said, "Shane, you saw that?" And he goes, "I did." I said, "Tell the ref." He goes, "I can't."
Yes,
I can only respond to what I'm asked by the referee.
Yeah.
So I said, right, why can you put up your hand in and say if there's an off the ball incident? Why can you call somebody in? Do you know what I mean? Because what you're doing is bring someone to the referee's attention there, and he goes, "It's just the way the rule book is. It's just the way it is." So what you're talking about there, Murph, in defence of the linesman officials, they can't.
No, they can't.
But like that, there should be a bit of flipping common sense here and give the powers to the linesmen, who are qualified referees, mind you. The power to communicate to James Owens.
Yeah, absolutely.
And tell him
the one thing I will say with Darren McCarthy, the first yellow, I think that only happened 5 minutes in, was it? 5 or 10
so early, yeah.
Nothing. But he got the yellow, and Shane McCallan goes, that's not a yellow. I was like, "You're right, Shane, that was a straight red." And he goes, "Don't start this now. Don't start this straight red." I was like, "That was filthy, straight red." And he was like, "Oh no, stop now, don't."
By the way, Tipperary supporters, you can sleep easy tonight. 2 yellows means he's okay.
There we go.
So it's two
suspected
straight
as
reds
much.
get trouble.
I suspect as much. It was floating around today, and then when I put it into Twitter, the fact it wasn't already up on Twitter, I was like, well, it mustn't be, because someone somewhere would have just checked this up. So yeah, there you go.
Surely some Cork supporter was sitting at home going, "Ma ha 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 ha, he's gone from the final," and they would have brought it to our attention by now. But alas, they have not. We'll talk about the Red Wave then, because I think we've got plenty of time to next week talk in more detail about the final coming up and so on. It's just such a quick turnaround with 2 weeks as well. It's so weird. Like, everyone's getting ready now for like media nights tomorrow night, and next thing it's match week really, really quickly. It's a remarkably quick turnaround. But anyway, Jarlath Burns, by the way, for anyone who may have missed it, his programme notes today, he wrote back massively on his comments from a few weeks ago at the hurling launch, where he said, is that possibility that from 2027 they've got concerts booked for next year? Apparently it's U2 in 2026 they're going to Croke Park, so therefore August is a non-runner, but in 27 it's a possibility. Now he has said there are vested interests within the GAA and the media and so on who are interested in trying to extend the inter-county season, and basically his very strong message was that the GAA are not going to bow to those people, vested interests who are trying to make the change, and that therefore the club season will still be upheld. So,
do you know what the word vested means, Will?
Go on.
The real word, financial interests. That's what it means.
Yeah.
Because nobody gives a shit about the game unless they're making money off it. The people who have the vested interests. Let's just get that out in the open very clearly. So come here. I am delighted Burns got a bit of sense and read the room, to be fair. I mean, the most respectful manner possible.
To be fair, it is reading the room scale as well. Like, he has obviously listened to the blowback over the last 2-3 weeks. That was since before the preliminary quarterfinal weekend. So he's had the best part of a month really to kind of, have a listen to what's happening. And definitely the feeling on the ground seems to be, don't do this.
Yeah, because the people that are saying the opposite, that the intercounty season needs to be extended, are people in a position that, for me, is conflicted. Mm-hmm. It's not coming from the most genuine place, to be honest, because they have a vested interest in the season being extended. Okay, if I hear people that say in the club scene that get behind the intercounty scene, getting extended, okay, we're willing to have a debate here. But I've never yet, again, open to correction, I've not yet seen any club manager or any club kind of official who is a bit of a profile or publicity in the national circuit say that they'll be very heavily in favour of the county season extending, because it doesn't. It doesn't favour 99.9% of players of our members, should I say. So I'm glad to see it, to be honest.
Yeah. That's definitely a member's pod, or another pod we can do in more detail another time. Yeah. But that was just in the programme notes for today's semi-final. So the other game, alas, Cork supporters would be mad keen to hear about how well they played, but this was a massacre. Cork 7-26, Dublin 2-21. Alan Connelly with a hat-trick. Patrick Horgan with 8 points. Brian Hayes with 2-1. Tim O'Mahony also with 2-1. Declan Dalton making a very strong case to stay in the team with 5 points, 2 of them from frees. Yeah. And it was fill your boots across the rest of the team as well. Darf has given 3 points, Kingston 2, Diarmuid Healy a point, Joyce a point, Lahan got a really good point when he came on, and Jack O'Connor got a point as well. Dublin, understandably, a bit more around a couple of scores in particular. Keane O'Sullivan, I thought his first 2 goals were remarkable, by the way, but 2-5 for him. Sean Curry with 7 points from frees. Fergal Whiteley, Conor Burke with 3 points apiece. The reality of this is, Murph, if we kind of address where Cork got the space, I think it's fair to say that Dublin were very brave, and Neil O'Callaghan said afterwards that it's kind of like it's either death by 1,000 cuts if you drop a player back and you try and play too conservatively, or you go toe to toe, and that possibility is there that if Cork get the right ball into their forward line, they can rip through you.
Yeah, I didn't actually see anything Neil O'Callaghan said after the game, but one thing that was very apparent for us was that the initial game plan, let's say, that Dublin would have went with, I can't remember which order it happened with, but Dublin at different stages went where they kind of sat back a small bit, and it was very apparent to us in front of where we were that, like, let's say Declan Dalton as an example, Declan Dalton was willing to drop into his own half, and the Dublin half backline weren't going to go with them, because that meant leaving that space in front of Connelly, Hayes and Patrick Horgan, but Connelly and Hayes in particular. So Declan Dalton was picking up balls and he was happy enough to do that. Now, when they kind of pushed up to a certain extent, to me, they didn't go fully with them. They didn't go up and go right up on them, even if it meant go into the opposition half. So they were kind of caught betwixt and between, where they didn't actually fully push up. But either way, I don't think it really mattered, because I just noticed how well Cork were able to go between both game plans, whereby target the lads at wing forward when they're sitting back a little bit. Lads will come forward into the channel, take the puck out of Patrick Collins. But likewise, when they pushed up, they were just targeting, landing like really good ball in behind into Hayes and Connelly. So for me, really what it was like when we spoke last week of Dublin, and we saying that, look, this seems like another big step, and that the surprise element is not there, etc., that we just, well, for me anyway, in particular, I felt that they just weren't at that stage yet where they could turn over this Cork team, without an ambush, without a surprise. For me, that played out by Cork being really ready for them, Cork having a game plan, and Dublin just not being at the level whereby the players on the field couldn't react quick enough to what Cork were throwing at them. Like, I mean, even as just an individual position, like when you looked at Hayes and Connelly getting the ball, there were some remarkable bits of skill during it. Connelly came out at one stage, he came out around the 45, and like, in fairness, I don't know who was up behind him. I think it could have been Paddy Smith who was on him. Paddy Smith didn't give him a yard, like he was really on him. And Connelly just controlled it and was gone. And we were looking at it going, that was outrageous skill. Like, the skill level of the Cork lads was so high that even though when Dublin were doing things right, they just couldn't get tabs on them. And for me, that was just a gulf in just the overall class around the team. And like this Cork team as well, when you saw what they're offloading off the bench, like they were bringing in top class lads in Conor Lehan, in Shane Kingston, and Tommy O'Connell, in Jack O'Connor, like a lot of lads who would feel they could or should be starting. But when they were lumping them lads in, and these boys know they're going to play in an All-Ireland final, they were stepping up to go through the gears as well. And Dublin just didn't have that either. And then when you look at the likes of Conor McHugh then as well, like Conor McHugh, I think must have been a hamstring or something like that, kind of early on. You see him pulling up. You were going, there's not enough here in this Dublin panel to really absorb what Cork are throwing at them. But really, the one thing for me from seeing the Cork lads in full flow, like these lads are just a team that are in a really good place. They've taken their beatings really well in terms of, I think it's actually kind of matured them a small bit, and made them a little bit hungrier and a bit more clinical, and probably not willing to let other teams into the game as much as they previously would have. So there's lots of elements there that just when I saw them in the flesh, I was like, this is a really severe team now to be meeting in an All-Ireland final, and particularly off the back of losing it last year. So like all those elements, I think we really got a glimpse of seeing this Cork team at the moment that, yeah, these are teams that have hurted over the last while. They're a team that have also hurled really well and performed to an incredible standard. And all those things are kind of culminating at the right time. But look, for Dublin, I think it played out a lot worse than we thought it was going to play out. But it played out very much in the form that we thought, in that we asked the question last week, what happens when Cork hit the back of the net? Like, that was one of the talking points that myself and Skehill spoke about, saying that, like, when that happens, do you still believe in your game plan, or what happens? And they didn't have time to answer, and the ball hit the net again. Like, so there was very much a drowning feeling, I think, for these Dublin lads. And I would say that with respect. I say that with respect from the point of view that this was a great year for Dublin. They've really come through set, but you can't just suddenly turn over a leaf and go out and beat this Cork team in an All-Ireland semi-final. I know you bet Limerick in the quarter-final, fine, but it just felt that all this was going to be too much for them this year, and it kind of it played out that way. Like, they looked like there was a huge gulf, and that's probably putting it mildly over the weekend.
Yeah, like, the thing of it is, Cal, there was no complacency from Cork in any way, and they were ravenous even when they got ahead. So when the fourth goal went in, or the fifth goal went in, they could have pulled up the handbrake at that stage and went, look, we're already in the All-Ireland final, let's run a few lads on. You know, even when I saw that, Rob Downey got nearly an hour into his legs, I think he came off after 57 or 58. You're thinking, job done. They're 15 points up, I think, at the time. Cork could have stopped, but Cork still wanted to get goal 6, wanted to get goal 7.
Yeah.
He had lads lining up for shots. Like, they were pretty relentless across the 70-odd minutes.
I think that to me, because obviously it's a great sign of the players, the team, but also as the management as a whole, that they built this into their team. Like, successful teams have a level of ruthlessness that is very, very rarely matched, right? And when you have a group of players, like Murph just spoke about the players that came in, right? Those lads are itching to get on the starting team, to be walking in the parade in the Ireland final, okay? So if you've got people who are on the pitch and they don't maintain a level of ruthlessness, they're going to be replaced. They're going to be replaced by someone who's champing. And your replacements are ready-made replacements that can still contribute at a very high level, so they don't miss a beat. So, like, we thought Seamus Hannity was a big loss for Cork. And with the greatest respect, he wasn't missed. Yeah. So the next day, if Patrick Horgan drops out, unfortunately, Conor Lehan is in. Do you know what I mean? So, like, Roach, or you've got you've Flynn, Lehan, Kingston, O'Connor, Murphy laying them off there. So there's a huge strength in that panel, which would, it kind of lends itself to the fact that the panel it has to be unrelenting. It has to continue to supply pressure to the opposition, because what's behind you, is often what pushes the most. Not what's in front of you, because the opposition provides a certain level of resistance, but the lads behind you, like, when you've got a team who where the third choice is pushing the second choice is pushing the first. It creates a great ambience. It creates a great atmosphere in training that's like a dog-eat-dog attitude. You know what I mean? Like, I think you're right, Murph, in the sense that the way Cork are flowing at the moment, like, is very hard to match. And it comes after, a couple of years being together and trying to do the right thing. You just look at the first goal. I have to comment on it because, like, it's just so silky and everything is just, if you're looking at a team that's on the same wavelength, regardless of age of player, look at the first goal. Long ball comes down. Hayes knows exactly what he's doing, touching it on. He knows exactly what he's doing. Healy's coming onto the ball. He picks that full stride, picks it up, no error, right? Turns back in, young fella, he's only 20 years of age, bounces the ball up to Dalton, great skill. Dalton gets it on the run, pans it off to Hayes. Hayes then maintains a great kind of awareness, not to hit first time because the hook touches the ball, goal. That to me showed, like, those boys are on the same page. They know exactly what's happening. So the minute Healy gets the ball, you've oncome runners. You know what I mean? So that's very, very hard to stop in a situational form because you can't plan for that, lads. You just cannot plan for it. All you can do as best possible is get as many lads around the ball in that defensive area to stop this Cork forward line, because you flip the script. What happened to the far side? Cork, and I admire it. I will say, very first, they are kind of cynical in the way they play in the defence. And like we would have been critical about them in the past about not being cynical enough, not applying enough contact onto the opposition. And now they're striking. I'm not striking, but they're like, their arms are in heavy. They're kind of showing tackles that maybe aren't tackles, Will. They're more like rugby tackles.
No, but this came up before, didn't it? I don't know what game it was back in the league. Was it maybe the Galway game? It was definitely one of those games where Cork were happy to take a foul in the opposition half. Do you know, like, your halfback would go to break out. A nicer team would probably let the wing back come out with the ball and play the next pass. Yeah. Cork are more than happy. We'll pull you down and you're going to have to hit a long range free here.
Well, completely, because like if you get a team like Dublin, like say, they're very strong on a counter attack, so they're very athletically based, So you want to keep the ball out of their hand. You want to get them to use the hurl as much as possible, but not in the hand, because if you get the hand, they get to utilise their legs well. So if you stop them at source, right, get them to long free in top of you, where you've got a set defensive structure, that's far better than a counter attack. Same within if they break your half back line and they're getting through you, just get numbers towards it and just shut them down and foul them. Give them a point. You know what I mean? Because because there's a great kind of, I suppose, confidence to know that what you have up front, like, will create, I was going to say 7-6, but they'll create an awful lot of scores, you know what I mean? So that whatever fouls you concede at the back, you know what I mean? And let's say you give away 7 or 8 frees in the course of the game. Now, of course you will give away that many frees, but I'm saying these specific frees that may have resulted in a potential goal opportunity, that might happen 3, 4, or 5 times in the game. Give them the 3 or 4 points, no problem. I'll give it away. Have at it. No problem. But from Cork's perspective, they just attacked with such pace that I was just saying to Dublin, foul, take the yellow cards, because a yellow card is far less of a punishment than goal after goal, especially when 2 or 3 are tacked on in quick succession. Like, I know, Murphy, you've commented before about cornerbacks being on yellow cards, but fuck it, take it. Take the yellow card and don't give them a green flag, let alone 3 in succession within, 10 minutes? You know what I mean? It's a harsh lesson, and like, in fairness, you have to say that Niall Kellican has done wonders for the Dublin team, in the sense that they have, you've never seen a team that, say, win the Ireland. I can't remember in the first year of management win the Ireland outright. You know what I mean? It takes Kylie time. It's taken Pat Ryan time. It takes them all time. It's directing the same way. It takes everybody time. So where Dublin started from to where they are now has been a vast improvement. And like, I would never have classed. This has been respectful now. I would say top tier of hurling in any given year contains 4 or 5 teams. You know what I mean? Not 8 or 10. Every year that might change. Like number 5 might drop down or up, and so on and so forth, right? But Dublin are heading towards top tier, which is great. It's great to see what they showed us 2 weeks ago and yesterday, in glimpses now, mind you, not the whole lot. They're heading in the right way towards top tier. That's really good for the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So from our perspective,
I saw someone, Murph, and I think you may well have been tagging it as well. So again, I'm not going back through the pile of comments from yesterday to find their name, so I'll paraphrase them ever so slightly here, which was, would Dublin have been better off in the grand scheme of things if the Galan goal had went in and the narrative had been, Dublin with 14 men really pushed Limerick, but then Limerick go on to play against Cork? I don't think that's a better thing. Surely getting the win in that quarter-final is far more important than whatever 20-point beating you ship in a semi-final.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't make any sense of that at all. Like, beating Limerick in championship is a current glass ceiling for a lot of teams. When you get to do that, you gain a huge amount of belief. Like, the way I would look at this Dublin team now going into a league next year and going into a championship, they're going to be savagely hungry because they've now been exposed to an All-Ireland semi-final. Granted, they were beaten well, but like, they got there. And if you told them that at the start of the year, you're going to get to an All-Ireland semi-final, but you'll get beaten well, you would take that for their current position. Now, if you said that about Cork Cork would be that's a disappointing year for them. So it's perspective on your own situation. For this Dublin team to come along, and this generation, not just the team itself, this kind of generation, this core group that hasn't had as much success as their predecessors, as those great teams that were in around the early 2010s and late noughties. For those teams had quite a bit of really fruitful success. These lads needed, again, it goes back to the earlier point. You don't just turn that on overnight and suddenly become successful. You have little markers along the way where you went, that was really good. That shows what we're doing. We're headed in the right direction. And if people row behind what we're doing, and you know, a rising tide will lift all boats. We'll all head in the right direction. So for me, and I said it last week or 2 weeks ago, the effect of this game, not only just beating Limerick, but getting to an All-Ireland semi-final, I think will have really positive ripple effects into the Dublin panel for next year in terms of other players like a Conor McHugh maybe, who might be a little bit more football orientated, but say, do you know what? Maybe I'm not to the standard that gets into the Dublin football team, but I'm a really good hurler also. Let's play me a trade with the hurlers. And suddenly then their stock rises a little bit more and they have competition within the panel, and suddenly they find themselves in the Leinster final, maybe taking a bit of silverware home. So like, this is the path I'm talking about that Dublin have to take. So that, no, in fairness, that is one point that I wouldn't take, that losing that, you know, a moral victory. Moral victory is no good. Real victory, have something tangible to go home with, have real things to say, yeah, we were better than Limerick on that day. That's much better than any moral victory.
Yeah. There were a few like mad comments last week on the YouTube that I picked up on as well. One of them that was COVID was a scam to ensure that Donald Trump didn't get re-elected.
Hang on, I did not see that coming. I thought I was going to say there's a few mad comments like, you know, bring back X and X player or bring back whatever. Sorry, we got a COVID comment about Donald Trump, right?
I think that one is firmly in conspiracy theory range.
Bot or real?
It was on the YouTube.
And second question, what did they want us to do about it?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe it was just to make the wider world available that was what, or sorry, aware of the fact that that's what COVID was. It was engineered by the US government of the time, I presume, to try and stop Trump getting in. I don't know. But that was one of them. That rated pretty highly. See, the drama meant I couldn't go through all the comments to check what they were. But the one I was trying to get was like, apparently the greatest disrespect we ever showed Dublin last week was mine, which is that I made 2 thumbnails last week. So the members pod actually had Nido Caelicon on it, and I think a player from one of the other semi-finalists. So I did 2 and 2. Basically, you had 2 on 1. I think one was Kilkenny and Tipp on the main one. I think we had Cork and Dublin on the other one. And apparently Dublin aren't even in the semi-finals if they're not in the thumbnail. So, and we didn't talk enough about the Waterford Miners.
But that kind of goes back to your hatred of Dublin, though, doesn't it?
Seems so. And I got an interesting voice message from which member of your family was it, Skehill? Because I'm trying to just piece all this together here to see who is who.
I come here. I call him my brother-in-law, right? But he's not actually my brother-in-law. So
you can see where my confusion came from.
So my missus has three siblings. Brother-in-laws. Has 3 siblings, 2 sisters and a brother, right? So
right,
the 2 sisters, they're fellas. I just call them brother-in-law, right? Because it's way easier. They're both guards, right? Okay. But Saline's lad, Thomas, right? The dub, the behemoth of a fella, right?
Right.
He left you a voice note this morning. I don't think can I play it? Am I allowed to play it?
I presume you can. It's not that bad. Do you want to put it up to your mic and see how it works out? Yeah, go on.
Am I allowed to play it?
I think so. It was like something out of Taken, wasn't it?
Is it bad? Like, is this okay? I can play it, like, but I'm not.
No. I think it's safe enough. I think this is in jest in case anyone is going to.
Oh, it's absolutely in jest. Jesus
like, I was going to report this man that he's actually going to come and kill me.
This is not a threat.
Well, this is James's brother-in-law. The lad you said you met outside the Aviva. I've never met you in my life, by the way, so you're telling lies. What I'd like to say is, I don't mind you talking about our lack of short ball play. I don't mind you talking about the fact that they ran straight through the middle. But if you stand anyway up for that ref, I will find you. I will hunt you down. And I will make your life hell, Will. Murphy-Ari.
I love that bit. The other's like, Murphy-Ari.
So Johnny Murphy had a fine game at the weekend, didn't he? So the other guy that I bumped into, is he your actual brother-in-law?
No, he's the other lad. So he's Anya's fella, Stephen.
Right.
So Murph, remember the road show? Anya and Stephen, the 2 guards.
Yep.
So, Grace's sister Anya. So that's the and Anya. Yeah, she attacked me last night for things that I've said in the podcast.
That wasn't Stephen on the recording there.
Well, that was Tom. So
Yeah,
Grace's
that's
two sisters, right? Anya and Saline. I'm actually giving away the family tree here, but this is not unknown. So Saline's dad is Tom. Anya's dad is Stephen. So Stephen is the guy you met outside the Viva. And Tom is the guy who thinks you have a hatred towards Dublin for reasons I don't know.
Tom all thinks I'm a liar for the very clear confusion where Skehill has mentioned brother-in-law. So I assumed that the guy that I met outside the Europa League final was his brother-in-law. So you can see where my mistake came in.
I fully believe it, yeah. It's just it's way easier to explain.
Okay. Oh, no, it is. It's not as easy to understand when you get this guy sending me a message going, if you stand up for the referee in that game, I'm going to come and get you. The ref, by the way, there were mistakes. And definitely Dublin, Murph can feel aggrieved at some of them. I think during the game as well.
First half was. There was 2 goals, Murph, I thought, in the first half on the Cusick side. Questionable calls that ended up in the net.
Go on, explain now. Again, this is me not having looked back at the match and me being at the match. So you might have seen a better angle of so for context, my position for watching the game was down literally on the sideline. So if there was something that happened at the Cusick side where something happened, I may or may not have seen it. But go on, what were the questions?
Do the BBC give you a little monitor in front of you as well?
They do, which we kind of forget because the match is
right in front. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Do you know what? You're engrossing as a fan.
Literally, there's a monitor. So we were behind Neil O'Callaghan for the match yesterday, and then we were behind Derek Ling for the one. So people kept kind of seeing us there. They were like, "Geez, you got great seats." I was like, "Well, we're actually doing the BBC." But as in a lot of people are watching RTE, but no, they gave us a little monitor. We just you forget sometimes to use it because you're engrossed. Like if Brian Hayes is after rattling the net, you're not going, I'm going to look at the monitor here now. You're going, you're looking at lads going ballistic on the field, But go on, sorry, Skehill.
Apparently I hate Dublin. So let's let Skehill give us the skinny on where he felt offended.
Okay, look,
you just gave it as well, all right.
So, we're at a wedding yesterday, okay, and there was a big screen, and we're sitting beside Tom, and we're watching the game, and he is silent during the game, okay.
Okay.
During a phase of play in the first half, there was a situation over on the Cusick side, kind of around the 45. I can't remember the players involved, so please forgive me. I think it was Keenan Sullivan, but he was dragged back or fouled or turned over, basically, tossed. Yeah. Ball goes down the line, ends up Tim Mahoney, Alan Connelly goal.
Yeah.
At the time, I was thinking, Jesus, that was Dublin free, and I thought, do you know what I mean?
There was definitely the first half. The general sentiment that we had was that Dublin they're being fairly hardly penalised here. Like, let's say on both sides, either not getting a free or a free being blown against them for, let's say, replicating tenacious tackling that the Cork lads were doing on them. So we actually did feel, and again, this is in the interest of balance. There's some weeks where we've been defending referees, etc. But I did feel like, regardless, and we'll all agree with that, it wasn't changing the game in any way whatsoever. But there was an element of frustration I could hear from the Dublin supporters in the stadium, but generally even from us. Likewise, when we were sitting there and we were watching Kilkenny and Tipperary, and we could see Darren McCarthy, first yellow, no, that's not the yellow, Paddy Deegan, so on. Looking at Cork and Dublin, there was a general sentiment that, Dublin aren't really getting the breaks here in terms of they're being fairly hardly penalised. So I would agree with that, and I agree with the sentiment in fairness that Dublin supporters could have felt a little bit hard done by at different times yesterday. The only probably saving grace of that was that it didn't really matter in the end. It wasn't going to change anything. And I think anyone who says that, if they got one or two of those frees and stayed in touch, like there was a Dublin supporter behind me at one stage, and he said, there's only 4 scores in it. They're down by 12 points. There's only 4 scores in it. I was like,
that's a glass half full person right there.
That's an optimist right there.
So it's like, it wasn't going to change anything. But I'd agree with you. You're allowed to feel frustrated. In fairness to the voice note that was sent, in fairness, he was like, don't, whatever about this, that, and the other, but you can't defend it. But yeah. It wasn't a great first 35 minutes from Johnny Murphy, but he didn't do anything drastic either. He just was a little bit harsh.
Do you feel like, I just feel like the tone that was set during the game was that Cork were allowed to, put arms to tackle an awful lot more than Dublin were. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they were.
Like,
they definitely.
That's the way it felt watching it live, Murph. Albeit behind a TV screen, of course.
There definitely was a few instances where I could see, like, is this spare arm tackle that we're talking about? And like, there was a few hard ones. Could you feel, like, how you can get a sense from the crowd that they can all sense it together? Could you feel it from the Dublin? You could. It was quite obvious. It was quite obvious.
Quite obvious. That's definitely so.
Just speaking about the crowd scale, they call it the red wave and all that. It must have been 5 or 6 to 1. The amount of Cork supporters who were there, like that could have been 50, 60,000 Cork fans.
How does that happen? Will? How does that happen? There was talks of 60,000 Cork fans that were there.
It had to be close to that. I saw the Do you see the one from behind Hill 16, which is clearly like a drone shot?
Yes.
And like you can tell very clearly because the amount of red versus the amount of blue versus however many non-red people were in the ground.
I've asked this question before, Willis.
It was 4/5 or 5/6 of the ground.
I agree with you. When it came time when Dublin footballers were in their pomp, right, and they were playing a match in Croke Park, how did they get the amount of tickets? Because that place was covered in blue. I always used to point towards the hill. How did they get the hill so packed? So
yeah,
question is begged. How did Cork get so packed out? Or was it a case of they got the tickets lapped up, or the Dublin supporters just didn't come out in force?
Or
is it both?
I'd give it a certain amount of credit to Corkers. So Cork have been sold out for every championship game that they've had since the Limerick semi-final last year.
Yes, but in particular, the home game is dominant that though.
Yeah, I know, but like it's still crazy.
You're talking about
like,
Dublin, you're in your own county here now.
I know, yeah, but I'm just saying that like Cork obviously sold out Ennis. Cork obviously sold out their other away game. What was their other away game? It was
What was Watford?
Must have Watford. It was Tipp at home.
Tipperary. No, Tipp is at home.
No, Tipp is at home. Yeah,
It was
Limerick away. Sorry,
Limerick. Bounced by Limerick. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So the two of them obviously sold out. They sold out all their home games. We talked during the league about the fact that Cork brought like a crazy crowd, and if you're in Division 1A, you want to get Cork away because you half the gate and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
They just have absolutely crazy support. Not that I'm asking you to rip up your power rankings of supporters a few weeks ago, but Cork have to be right up there.
It's not even a wave. It's a bloody tsunami. It's just like this is apocalyptic with the amount of people they have. Let's say domination, takeover stuff. And like, mustn't that be great for the team though as well? It must be great for them, to know that they have that level of support and that decibel level of support in the stadium like Croke Park. That when you rattle the net, I'd say more. Obviously, we couldn't feel it on television, but when the first haze go went in, I'd say the place erupted.
The place went mental. It was very similar to what we spoke about last week. Is that thing of 80,000 people? But I'd even take it on a step further, like we said, with the attendance of Cork people there. What did we agree of Cork supporters was there? I mean, 50,000.
Easily. Had to be.
Easily? Yeah, that's fair enough. When the ball, every time it hit the net, like even when Patrick Horgan came off, the noise in the stadium was unbelievable. It really felt like, let's say, what Limerick had going there, 2 years ago, for example, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when, it was just everything about it. It felt like you were drowning in the stadium, amongst all this. So it was impressive. And despite the fact the game was over quite early, that noise kept up. It was really impressive, and I think that's just symptomatic, really, of just where they are at the moment. The bandwagon's up and going. Yeah,
it's tricky to get your hands on All Ireland final tickets. A lot of clubs in Cork, though. I'm sure they'll try and trade them off with football tickets over the next couple of weeks and try and get their hands on hurling final tickets to go. I'm sure they will find a way to get quite a few tickets. But generally, kind of just a lot of neutral people go to the All-Ireland final. It's a bit weird. And then you get, people who obviously take up the club have got their 2 tickets and so on. So maybe you can't quite dominate in the way. But it'll be intriguing to see because Tipperary supporters come out and force huge Tipp crowd there this afternoon as well. The other one I want to ask you about, Skehill, my fantasy hurling captain, because I forgot to change him from the penultimate round in Munster. So he's still there as captain going into this weekend, is Brian Hayes. And this, I thought, was most remarkable from Peter McNamara on Twitter. And Peter, I think at the tail end of the league, had sent me the goal involvements that Brian Hayes had been in so far at that point of the year. And he was already like 3/4 of their scores when it came to goals. Now, 35 goals for Cork this year. Brian Hayes has scored 10. He's got 10 direct assists. And he's got 10 secondary assists where he was the pass before the pass. So he's been in the final 3 movements of 30 of Cork's 35 goals this year.
It's absolutely astounding. It's astounding, and he's not a edge of the square, sit there type full forward. He's all over the place. Will he can occupy any position in the full forward line. He can take a high ball. He's 2-sided. He's got nimble feet for a big man. He has power. He has pace, and he's got a deft touch heading towards goal. All epitomised by his first goal yesterday. So he's a Rolls Royce player at the moment, and like the more than the Cork team as a whole, he's in a very free flowing state at the minute where everything is moving in the right direction for him. We spoke about Hurl of the Year over the last couple of podcasts, and I think it's fair to say, I'd say we're in agreement. He's probably the front runner and probably clear front runner for Hurl of the Year at the moment. Because the guys who we'd spoken about, we nominated a person from each team. And it's not that they took a step back or anything, it's just that he took two or three steps forward. That's all it is. Like he just put his head above the parapet and is operated at a level yesterday that I thought personally was deserving of man of the match. Now I know the award is irrelevant. I get that, right? But to me, he was just so effective. And he's the nucleus of Cork's attack. And without him, they're a lesser attack. I have said publicly here that there are a number of players in the Cork team that when they don't have they can still take away fine. And I said last week Rob Downey was the most important player. I still stand by that. Okay, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying a Cork attack without Brian Hayes is not the same. It just is not the same. And when he's in there, it's electric. He just keeps things moving, and he brings other players into the game as well, because he draws so much attention. And he's moving for a big man. When you watch behind the goal, which we've studied before, his movement isn't overly extravagant. It's not this run, that run, cross runs. It's just simple runs at the right time, and he brings in players around him. Like, he's extremely, extremely effective, and he's the premier full forward at the moment of the country. He's just top class.
I don't want to steal too much away from next week's pod, which will be more straight up, full fat Cork versus Tipperary chat, and we'll break down every player and who's going to be up against who and so on. But I just want to ask about Connelly, Murph, before we finish up on this, because last year people talked about the fact, I think he was a bit ill going into the semi-final against Limerick, and maybe he didn't have the crazy impact that he had earlier in the season last year. We saw Connelly back to his best. Every semi-final weekend now we're having a Wimbledon-style goal. He got one at the weekend. His movement was great. He's very unorthodox in how he finishes and how he moves. And he adds just that little bit of X factor into the Cork attack, and it looked like he was back to his best again yesterday.
Yeah, I'd agree with your first statement there that in my recollection last year of Connelly, I think he got 2 hat-tricks in 2 games quite early on.
One was in the league. One was in the league against Offaly, and he got another one after that.
Yeah, and so there's this expectation that you will now go out and score hat-tricks every day for us, please, and thank you. But yeah, and then he got a bit of an illness and different things like that, and trying to carry on that form as well can be quite tough. But like, again, maybe it goes back to the point we're saying of just this team maturing as a group. Like Skehill pointed out that it takes 2 or 3 years really for a team to evolve to that stage. But that's also not only as a team, but individual players, their levels also increasing. And like Connelly, and what I found really outstanding between, in particular, Connelly and Hayes, like the two of them play off each other, and Horgan himself, like the dynamic is different between all three, but the two boys, it is like the Twin Towers effect, like where it's like both of them, 2 boys up there with the red helmets, and you're just going, you nearly lose track of who's who. But when you see one of them breaking, Connelly got the ball, for example, I can't remember which goal it was now, but it's the one where he bounced it into the ground. He was over to the right side near the Cusick stand on the 14 in the first half, and he kind of bounced it into the ground. But you see Hayes is poaching. Like, you see Hayes is there going, right, Connelly's taking this on, I'm in and I'm poaching, as any good kind of, I suppose, dual relationship would have. But then likewise then as well, as soon as Hayes gets it, Connelly's pulling away, because he's like, right, well, that fella is an absolute tank and he's going to run through the middle. I'm going to pull away here. And now suddenly there's serious problems. Like, their understanding is really good. But for Connelly in particular, to bring it back to him, like yesterday was an absolutely ridiculous day for him. I mean, what did he finish up? Was it 3-2? He finished up at 3-3?
It's 3-2 from play, I think.
3-2,
yeah. I have him down for 3-2 here, but I have a squiggle as well. But like 3-2 in an All-Ireland semi-final is absolutely outrageous. And again, a special mention for that bat, that bat goal that he got. Like, I mean, that was absolutely ridiculous. And the first touch where he touched it back out away from the defender, because the defender was on the shoulder, and if he caught that, the ball was exactly where the defender would want it to be. So the fact that he flicked it back out up into the air and then flicked it into the goal, outrageous. But yeah, like, maybe if he got a bit of slack last year, a bit of flack from people, there's nobody can say anything about him this year. He's absolutely outstanding, and fantastic weekend for him.
Okay, I've got one other thing I want to touch on before we finish up for this, but 2 quick-fire ones for you, Murph. Who gets the boot from the BBC panel for Shane O'Donnell for the final?
I'm not sure about how that works. No, I'm not sure how it works. So it's not that anyone's getting the boot.
He's coming in as an extra.
Yeah. So from my understanding, he's in as an extra. So what the BBC do is they have like 3 panelists, and they also have 2 players down the sideline. Now, they actually had no one on Saturday. Did they have anyone on Saturday on the sideline? I don't know if they did, but today they had Seamus Callan and Brian Hogan for the Sunday episode of it. So all we know at the moment, I'm fairly sure he is. Shane O'Donnell's with us for the final. But in what capacity, I don't know, because the thing is, for the final, and RTE are actually the same, you might see that they're all doing pitch side now. So it's all down because it actually adds a lot to the atmosphere of it. It's actually really good.
Do you know what it adds to massively as well? Is when the players were going over to chat to you guys not long after full time either.
Very good.
So, sometimes you're waiting and it's the commentator who's gone down to chat to a player and so on. It meant that you were getting them a little bit relaxed, because like Ford could come over and chat to you, and I think Noel McGrath was over for a while chatting to the RTE panel as well.
Yeah.
They're relaxed because it's enough after the game that they've been able to have their few moments, but still the adrenaline is running where you get something interesting for them at the same time.
Yeah, and what the two other things I find interesting with it is that you also have 3 ex-players that they probably played against, asking them questions as well. So in our case, like we had over Patrick Horgan, and Patrick Horgan is there standing beside Seamus Flanagan, who he would have played against in the Munster final not too long ago. Me, who would have marked him, and then I'm not sure how much Neil McManus would have played against him, but we were allowed to ask questions away, as the Sunday Game lads or the RT lads are allowed to as well. But that dynamic is really nice. But also for the players' point of view. Like the lads came over and Jason Ford was over with us today. It's kind of a nice little dynamic. Like when the lads come over and you're just chatting away and you're congratulating them and best of luck and all this stuff. It is actually, it's a very natural, I think, setup as opposed to like you were saying, you're down in a cold tunnel somewhere, you're in a corner, there's a microphone thrown in your face, you haven't a clue who you're talking to. You know, it's a nice little dynamic there that Seamus Flanagan's interviewing you or Neil McManus. So yeah, it works well. But for the final, again, I'm not sure what it will go back to because there's a lot of stuff goes on All Ireland final day. Will they be told to go back to the boxes? Will they be down in the field? We don't know. So I'll arrive in the day and wherever I'm told to go, that's where I go.
That's fair enough. We know you haven't got bumped for Donald, which is the most important thing. You and Flanagan were marauding around Dublin last night. You got to sneak in the Amble concert along the way as well. Am I right in saying that Amble liked the Hurling Pod, or somebody within Amble likes the Hurling Pod?
Correct. So the lads didn't go to the gig. Myself and Aileen went to Amble. And we met up with the lads afterwards. The Oisin McCaffrey in particular listens. I don't know about the other 2 lads, so Robbie and Ross, I don't know about that. But I'll tell you actually a good one. Now the name escapes me. I may ask Oisin about this one. But we were chatting away, we're having a pint, and he was saying that when they were touring Australia, they were listening to us. And like, sure, of course, then the usual thing. Jeez, that Skehill is great crack. The usual, obviously, like that Skehill is great. Like these boys played Trinity last night, sold out Trinity. They're supporting Neil Young in Hyde Park in a few weeks. They played with Hosier in Wyoming. They think you were good crack. So I'm just saying, right? But we were sitting at the bar and I was chatting to Oisin. It's real right crack anyway. And there was a fella down, and for people who'll be listening, there's you might know it, but they have a very popular song called Mary's Pub. It's a huge song. It's probably one of the biggest ones, certainly for the live show. But there's a big square bar, and he pointed down to the end of the bar. And he was waving at one of the lads. I think your man is kind of a manager for them or something like that. But he was like, that lad down there, he actually wrote 2 verses of Mary's Pub. And he was waving at him. Your man looked up. He goes, on the Hurling Pod, he goes, your man came up and was chatting. It was just funny to hear that, like, you know, lads who you might necessarily think would be listening or whatever were listening. So, yeah, lads are fans anyway. So we have...
Yeah. This podcast brings us into bizarre places. Again, Simmery, I was in the hospital last week and I bumped into one of the hotel porters and he was telling me how he was standing behind Skehill for the Dublin-Galway game in the under-20s this year. And
there you are.
His biggest surprise was that Skehill is as tall as he is.
Go away.
I thought that was one of his defining characteristics, but apparently in person it's still a surprise.
Well, this is it. And like one of the things, it probably goes back to rounding it up. I find this peculiar if you add up the places. Like I was donating blood. I mentioned it earlier. Donating blood about 6 months ago, and your man who was as he was sticking the needle into my arm was like, "Yeah, but listen to the old pod." There. So I was like, wasn't expecting you. It's like the yesterday, expecting to get a bollocking of one of the lads from Crow Park from ground staff. It was actually a directive to say make the podcast longer because we have to work. I was like, okay, sorry, I'll do that. And then it expands into the showbiz realm of Amble finished Trinity College concert last night, and they're saying, "Yeah, love the pod." So, all realms.
It's a bit daft, really. Didn't think about it. It's a bit daft.
Well, to be honest, is like the reason I find it mad is because the 3 of us are sitting here now. In my head, this isn't going out to a lot of people. Like, in my head, it's us chatting. Like, that's our probably obviously the nice sweet spot to have. Yeah. But you forget it's going out. You know, that's sort of until someone texts you and says, "Here, what Skehill said the other day, or what you said the other," and you're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot people were going to listen to that." So. I find that bit a small bit jarring at times. Yeah,
you might see our predictions from last week, and apparently I was one of the few pundits who went for Tipperary to win today. You see it all listed out, and you just go, geez, I didn't think that kind of, 20, 30 seconds off the cuff where we all picked a game that we all thought was close would be remembered by who predicted what. But
yeah,
we all hated Tony Counties.
I was chatting to someone at the weekend, and Saturday night I was chatting to someone, and they were saying, do you know what, like, lads should honestly do about the predictions? Because for the Kilkenny match today, it really was 50-50. But then let's say I picked Kilkenny, you picked Tipp, whatever. But one lad was like, oh, you should just call it as is and say, I don't know who's going to win. I was like, that's the first pitfall you'll ever make, is where lads will light up on you if you just don't, or worse again, if you pick a draw. Yeah. No, don't like that. I said, you have to pick a team to win, and that's it, done. So, like, for whoever it was that was saying that to me, I was like, no, you have to pick a team. You can't just say, oh, sure, I don't know who's going to win. What's the point?
And sure, everyone middle of the game is a genius as well. As one of the girls in work texted me and went, "Oh, your prediction's up in smoke now." I'm like, 40 minutes left in the game. Will you relax? Like, you know, Tipper after banging in a couple of goals here. Like, maybe they're coming back into it. I do have one final one, and this will actually help, I think, Skehill, for the guys who are mowing the pitch or putting the lights out in the pitch when they're listening to us. And that was TJ Reid at full time. And I never ever want to retire anyone on the pod, but people probably saw the pictures. So he's there with his daughter, Harper Mary, at the end of the game. He looks incredibly emotional. I think that is understandable when you lose a tight game like that and the nature of the defeat. He's in Ronan Mara's jersey, and it's going to be on the thumbnail. Himself and Harper are hugging at the end of the match as well. Look, it's inevitably going to happen. There's definitely that feeling based on what we saw at the end of the game that could well be the end of the road.
It could be. Yeah, like who knows what's in store for TJ? Like you or I can't exactly talk to what is in his plans to say, whether that be his professional or personal life.
He by the way did say himself, before anyone jumps to any conclusions there, he wanted to play till he was 40, and that was only about 8 or 9 weeks ago, middle of the championship. He said that he felt his body is able to do it.
7 this year, Murph, is it? 38? Which is it? 38.
I think he turns 38. He's
definitely
older.
December. 38 December.
He's 38, yes. So like he's a year older. So yeah, that's hard going though at that level. You know what I mean? And he might, let's say, he might. Like, was that club game? Was that county game? Who knows? But I do look at them kind of pictures of those. I haven't seen the video around about now. But if he's out in the pitch, let's say, with his daughter, are the crowd gone?
Yeah, it's definitely a bit after the game. It's the old classic, you know, where you go. He's wearing Ronan Mara's jersey, he's obviously swapped with, and he's still got the socks fully up and whatever else. But the crowd is largely gone. I'm looking at the picture here. It's a fairly empty canal end in behind him. He's gone back out for another walk. And look again, I suppose you want to probably share a moment with your kids and so on.
Yeah,
and
it's probably experience because it's lovely. It is lovely to share with your kids, regardless of what pitch it's in. Let's say, and it's a shared experience. But I don't think that would lend itself towards him, you know, thinking that it's retired, it's the last experience to get. I'm pretty sure that if he goes back playing next year, they'll be back in that pitch again. I'm pretty sure they'll be back there again. But no, look, he's still able to produce with. He's still able to produce. You know, like is he the type of person? And maybe Murph can answer this question. And some are, and some aren't. That's fair too. Some lads, let's say, when they play at such a high level, they want to be starters for their whole career, and maybe they won't be able to drop down a level, if you know what I'm saying. And might have the same impact that they had for the vast majority of their career. I don't know what he's like as a person, Murph. Is he that kind of person? Could he come on for 20 minutes? Or is he full duck, no dinner, if you know what I mean?
I don't know, like, because during the week, I think Tommy gave an interview during the week where he was, I think it was actually with Wooly, I just seen a clip of it. Yeah. I think he was saying something that the reason he retired, well, one of the reasons certainly that he retired, I think when he was
done, he basically said that, I'm paraphrasing slightly, he was like, when I was done as a starter, that was kind of it.
Yeah, because he said, I want to be playing hurling. I don't want to be sitting on the bench. And he alluded to some players that, you know, have been that player for their county, which is understandable. With TJ, like I would think that TJ, if he reached a stage where he knew he had something to contribute, and that was communicated to the management, and they were under understanding, yeah, listen, we reckon you have, you know, a good half hour in you, 20 minutes. I don't know. And I also don't know at what stage he gets to that stage, that he once was under the understanding that he would be happy to stay going. But the thing is, I would be thinking is that, like, what more has TJ to give if he gets to that stage? Like, is in from his own point of view, I'm saying this, like that, you know, he's given so much to Kilkenny hurling. I think it really just comes down to his own competitiveness and at what stage he will be satisfied to actually go, okay, well, that's enough now. Like, obviously coupled with whether the body can still go, etc., etc. So I really don't know. I've never asked him that. You know, at what stage would he be satisfied? I've actually, do you know what? I've never really asked many players that. Would you be satisfied coming off the bench, or would you? I think a lot of those situations come down to. Tommy would be the example where he says, no, I can't. But for the rest of the players, I think it's very much, well, it depends on the circumstances. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, as in, it depends if you actually think you're going to be used. It depends if you think you really have a shot. Yeah. And if in case you're only coming on for 2 or 3 minutes, is that worth it? You know, probably not. So
it's very position oriented too, Murph, as well, though. I always find it's very position oriented. If you're a forward, you always have a greater chance coming on than if you're a back or defender or goal, for example. So if you're in that position whereby you're not starting as one of them, the positions 1 through 9, you're getting out of town. But the forwards mightn't necessarily.
Yeah.
So, but look, I still think like he's plenty to offer. I wouldn't be returning him yet. Jeez, no.
No, and the very last one, that Murph, away from TJ himself. Do Kilkenny right now feel closer to winning the All-Ireland than they did after the Clare game last year?
Do they feel closer now?
Good question.
Do they feel closer now? I think they probably do feel closer now. The reason for that is because Limerick have kind of come back into the pack a bit. Like at the time, Kilkenny, if you're speaking exactly like literally at this moment, this time last year, Kilkenny didn't know. When I'm talking about Kilkenny lost their semi-final on the Saturday night last year, I'm correct in saying that. Limerick were still in the championship the following day. So when Kilkenny were digesting that night, they were going beaten by Clare today. You know, Limerick, as they would have thought at the time, are more likely going into the final. In that 12 months, there's been a little bit of a change. There's been a fair bit of changing of the guard. Cork are the pole team now. Clare didn't get out of Munster. Limerick are, you know, they would have felt, okay, the quarter final was what it was, but they've come back into the pack now as well. So I think for Kilkenny, they will look at it and go, like Jordan Malloy and a few of these lads have really, you know, they were great finds this year. But I think where Kilkenny will be going, looking at it, is that we probably need just a few more lads off the bench to give us that variety of options when, depending on what scenario we're in, that we can introduce these players to really have an impact on the game. Because when you look at Cork can really do that at the moment. But Kilkenny will probably look to say, you know, maybe for us to sustain a championship, we just have to get one or two. But like Kilkenny footy would have believed before today that they could have won the All-Ireland this year. I would have believed also they were good enough to go and win the All-Ireland as well this year. Do you think
they could have beaten Cork in the final then?
Do you know what the overriding sentiment, and I'll throw this out there as a kind of a grenade for Cork fans, right? This is the overriding sentiment around Croke Park today for Kilkenny Tipperary, refers to both sides. A lot of people have been suspecting that the winners of the All-Ireland is coming from today based off how the last 2 days have played out. So like in Croke Park randomly, right? I'll give you an example. Last year when I was going to the semi-final and I was down in Croke Park, for Cork and Limerick, before the game, there was a sentiment before the game where Cork fans were kind of going, I think we could give these lads a rattle. And the Limerick fans were actually a little bit kind of cautious. They were a little bit cagey. And that was the one sentiment I would have taken from that day. Before today, and quite a few inter-county players and different things were saying, I reckon whoever wins today actually could have a serious tilt at winning this All-Ireland, because in the manner in which Cork won on Saturday might lead that a little bit of coming in under the radar, because it was so impressive what Cork did on Saturday. It might actually benefit the team that comes through. So the one thing I'll throw out there, and Cork fans can digest that whatever way they want, and it's a big talking point. And I'll also say this: it wasn't my point. I didn't come up with it, but it was said to me about at least 5 times that people before today were going, whoever wins this game, it could be enough to make them, you know, really put in a performance. And it's only one performance. It's only 170 minutes in Croke Park. So, yeah, I don't remember what you asked me there, Will, but I do.
It doesn't really matter. You got into a more interesting point because Skehill can have the last word on it.
No, but are you satisfied to answer your question there? Because I don't want to make sure.
You were trying to answer it here. You were like, are Kilkenny close or not? I think the feeling I got was it doesn't feel like they're. No, they're further away at least.
No. I do think they are closer, because the pack is now, there's not one dominant team that's absolutely destroying teams, albeit Cork are going really well. The pack itself is very even at the moment. So any team can come out of that pack and go and have a tilt at a final.
Okay, Skehill, answer the question I won't get to ask you next week, because we'll be talking about Tipp against Cork. Had Kilkenny got over the line today, would Kilkenny or could Kilkenny have beaten Cork in the final?
Yeah, they could, yeah. Now, obviously, we're talking hypothetically here, but and it's the same thing as applied to Tipperary. You're talking about 2 teams who played today who were very evenly matched. I think if either of them qualified today, they would have confidence going into a game, because the final, this is hard to explain, and people listen to this might think you're talking shit, but the final is just a different type of game. It just is. Like, finals, they do have a habit of taking on a life of their own, you know, and they don't usually go with the norm, you know. And like last year is a very strong case in point. I thought here sitting here that Cork would wipe through Clare, to be honest, you know, with the way they played in the semi-final against Limerick, and that did not be the case whatsoever. So we can't sit here with a huge confidence that Cork are definitely going to win this game. Had it been Kilkenny over Tipp, great chance. And I think there's evidence in the fact that how do I say it? I mean this in a nice way. Cork have been shown that they can get pulled back towards the pack as well from a day in, day out. You know, they haven't shown this level of ruthless consistency in every single game they've played. They've stuttered here and then. You'd have to admit they have. Like, you know, we point towards the game in the Gaelic grounds in the group game that Cork played. Fair enough, right? And the Munster final was a great contest, but they didn't get to the heights of the highs are Ennis, the highs are the league final, the highs are what happening in Dublin. Yeah. And come here, no team across this championship has hit that high and maintained that high for the whole course of the championship, to be fair. But when Cork hit it, Jesus Christ, it's very high. It's extremely high. And when they hit it, it's very hard to see a team live with them, okay? But when the likes of Kilkenny and Tipperary come to playing a final, again, game of its own, and Cork mightn't be at the height of what they were yesterday, hey, anything can happen. Well, of course, anything can happen. But I will say, and we said this about Limerick all the time, if Cork come and play like they played yesterday, with that ruthless efficiency and the forwards moving there they were, it's hard to see past them, in fairness. But again, it's very hard to replicate that too.
Yeah. Can Tipp beat Cork? To find out, you'll have to tune in next week, because that's going to be the preview for the All-Ireland final. That's as good a sell as I can give you for next week's pod. As possible, Paul Murphy from your undisclosed location somewhere near Croke Park. Thanking you.
I'm in Tala. Thanks very much.
That's not much of a mystery, is it? And also a man in white. This was not coordinated that I'd be in black in the middle of the two lads in white, because I did enjoy after the Munster final for whatever reason. I think I was wearing like a black jumper that day, and one of you was in red and one of you was in green. It was almost like the game itself.
So I wore this. I actually, maybe Murphy, you didn't. I wore this on purpose. I'm not getting any colour attributed to me today.
Sorry, you wore the white. I also wore the white on purpose because this is what I was wearing on the BBC today, and I have to wear colours that I'd be horse and sweat walking around. I'd be just standing in Croke Park, and I'm like Tom Morrissey of Punditry. Like I'm just horse and sweat. You ever know Tom Morrissey?
No, I have another question. Do they tell you what to wear?
No. They just say smart casual. They just say fire away. But I'm just very conscious. I break out the Mitchum because, like, you be standing there. There's like Croke Park today went between baking hot to lashing rain to windy, and the last thing you want is thrown on like a pastel blue shirt and getting absolutely destroyed. So I was like, a bit of white, a bit of black. Yeah, keep it safe. Keep it. So that's why I'm wearing white. Fair
enough. The lads are like a boy band either side of me here. James Skehill, thanking you, sir.
God bless.
All right, we'll be back next week for the big bumper preview of the All-Ireland final. We'll see you then.